Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's beta session. Today, we have quite a packed schedule and a few new things that we will be introducing. So let's get started. We're going to start with the probe audit parts and also the new caseware version then 2024. Let's um, get started then. So my name is Christian Stein. For the ones that don't know me, I'm the product manager of assurance. You can also follow me on LinkedIn if you scan the QR code. And then with us today for the probe section, you and I will also be presenting the compliance updates to ISO 600. So we'll move on to U&A in a minute. All of you are muted and the cameras are turned off, but please use the question function during the session if you do have any questions. If you do lose signal, please exit and enter the webinar again, and then rather use the app than the browser. It just gives a better experience. The recording will also be made available after the session. So if you miss parts of it, if the quality is bad, or if you want to share it with someone else in the firm, a recording will be made available of the full session. So on the agenda, we are going to start off with probe. Then for those of you that stay on, we'll then move into idea. After that, financial statements, and then audit international. So looking at probe, we'll first look at the beta process. So now we are moving into beta. Then we'll look at the assurance reports. After that, the document manager, speed improvements, ISO 600 changes, what's new, fixes and hot fixes, and any known matters that we have. So just a quick recap of the beta process. So it's not yet the final product. We are only at a beta stage now. So we are at a stage where we're comfortable to release it to a select group for you guys to then test it and give feedback from your environment. Also, any experiences that you have on the product, you can then give us feedback on that, and we'll share the feedback sheets and the install sets a bit later, and I'll give you updates on that. All of the probe templates as well as then financials will be on Caseware Working Papers 2024. So we're releasing very early this year, and this is to accommodate for the ISO 600 interim audits. And we've really listened to what you guys asked to say, this is a new compliance requirement. Some of you want to early adopt, some of you want to implement it for interim audits. So we've tried to push the releases forward as we can, and that's why we're also releasing the Working Papers 2024 release now. Ninka will share with you some updates on XBRL. That will then come in October. Files will then also be updated when you do open it. So any engagement files in progress will be updated if you install Working Papers 2024, and they cannot go back to 2023. So please be careful when you do install Caseware Working Papers 2024 that you make sure you do it in a safe environment and that you don't touch engagement files in progress. After you've tested, please uninstall 2024 and go back to 2023, or either do it in an environment that's separated because you don't want to by mistake open an engagement file on 2024 and then the team won't be able to access it. Okay, so looking at the beta timeline. So we're doing the beta webinar today, then the install sets will be available for you close of business tomorrow, but we'll also send an email with access to the cloud on Tuesday morning. So you'll have the next 2 weeks then to provide us with feedback, test the templates, and then we're also doing some visits to Durban and Cape Town, and we have a session in Johannesburg. So if you want to book for those sessions, you're welcome to book. I think important just to note, those sessions are not training sessions. It is sessions for you to come and meet with the product managers. Myself and Inka will be there. We will take your feedback. Please be sure to have tested or at least looked at the templates. Bring your opinions. Tell us what worked, tell us what didn't work, because that's the opportunity that you have to really provide us with feedback, and we can take that back into the teams and give them the feedback to improve the template for you. After we've released, it normally takes a while for us to get that feedback in again. So now is the opportune time. So make sure that if you do want to attend the in-person sessions, that first of all you book for them, but just remember it's not a training experience. It is actually where we need to get the feedback, and we'll be discussing some of the areas with focus inquiries on some of the documents. So come with that feedback in hand. And also, um, we are going to limit it. The sessions are, we try to keep it small enough so that we can get the feedback. So we do limit it to one, maximum 2 people per firm. So if you haven't yet booked, make sure that you book if you want to join us, so that you make sure that we can accommodate. And then we'll get the final feedback on the 28th of June, and that's when the feedback form will actually close for feedback. So make sure if you do have any feedback for us, to put that in the feedback form. Okay, so to register, you can go to the Success Community, then click on Training, and there is actually the event register, and those will be on the 24th, 25th, and 26th of June. You can then register for the applicable sessions. Then for the collateral and the install sets, the templates are not yet available. We will make those available tomorrow, but I will send an email to you with the install sets and the information on Tuesday morning. So we are going to upload all of the install sets again to the support cloud. And if you are not yet a user on the support cloud, we will also add you later this afternoon after we finish the webinar to the support cloud. So you might get an invitation email today, but we are only going to upload the templates later. And then in there, there's a feedback sheet. So if you want to provide the feedback, please provide it within that feedback sheet. Okay, so that is the beta process. So now we are going to start with the assurance reports. You and I will talk a little bit later around all of the ISO 600 things. But because the assurance reports is an interesting one because it's included in the financials, but it's also part of the audit engagement, we have thought it good to just go quickly through the assurance report changes there as well. So the first, and I want to say the biggest change this year, is now when you are using your consolidated financial statements and you use the consolidation feature, we have updated the assurance reports to talk about the group or the consolidated financial statements. So you can see I've highlighted them there in the screenshot. So we've also updated the assurance reports. It is not yet consolidated with all of the group assurance report. It's still just for the parent company. Okay. And then for the enhanced auditors reporting that was released by IRBA late December last year, we have included a selection box for you in the information store. And there is, you tick whether it is a public interest entity. When you do select that it is a public interest entity, the area I've highlighted in coral will come up around the enhanced auditors reporting. That is now mandatory for IRBA, and that is for the South African companies or South African entities. And there's also going to be, you can see the final materiality, the group audit scope, and all of those requirements together with the key audit matters. So the key audit matters have been updated in Probe and Audit International, and they've also been updated within the assurance report. Then two very exciting things that you will see when you do install the new templates. There's two new folders on your document manager. The first one is called Idea Integration, and the second one is Client Inquiries Received. So the idea integration we'll deal with in the idea session, but the client inquiries received, we are planning on launching a new app called the Client Inquiries app. And with that app, you can then send client inquiries to your clients. So requests for documentation, requests for information, they upload those, and those supporting documents and evidence then come directly into the document manager of the engagement file that you've linked it to. We're not going to demo that today and go through detail. The agenda is quite full already. But in the in-person events, we will deal with it in a bit more detail. I'll show it to you. And if you are interested in looking at that app in a bit more detail, you're welcome to reach out to me, and I can then show that to you and also activate it for you so that you can get access to that. So it's a bit different than the desktop apps because you need to have specific access. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand over to you, Renee, to take us through the rest of the probe session, and then I will be back with you on the idea side.
Thanks, Christian. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's session. It is lovely to be joining you. I just quickly want to be sharing the right slide, taking over and moving on from there. Right, so I see a number of familiar faces. That's lovely. My name is Johanna Skreder, and I will be addressing the probe-related changes today. Good. So in terms of speed improvements, just so that you have an idea of the overall or the universal changes, the team had worked quite hard on making some speed improvements to the opening and even saving of some of the documents. I think the one that I got quite excited about when I had a look at it in the What's New document, but then also experienced that change, was with regards to the risk tables when they refresh in 11.16. So the team tells me it's about, I think, something 91% or something change in terms of the speed improvement, which was really great. I've really experienced that myself as well. So that was quite good. All right, so that's the universal change for the product. Please just note that this will only be applicable to new files. There will be some information in terms of how this affects the current files or the files that you roll forward, but the major changes then to the new files. All right, and then we get stuck into the ISA 600 changes. All right, so I guess one of the main things about this release is the fact that we have content for ISA 600 revised, which, as you all know, is the standard, the auditing standard specifically for group financial statements, including then the work of component auditors. And this is a standalone standard, but then also obviously incorporates changes. Well, the reason why they changed it this time around is to incorporate the new and the revised requirements in the application material, where they've changed or focused then on changes similar to ISA 220, 315 revised, and then very specifically strengthened the auditor's responsibility for a variety of those buzzwords, the professional skepticism, communication, and documentation. All right, the standard is effective for financial periods that started on or after 15 December 2023. So if your client has a shorter financial period, that could possibly have been a June year end, otherwise possibly September, or rather a period end, not a year end. But then your first full 12-month financial period or year end that you could probably expect is going to be December. And so that's also one of the reasons why the releases are made available a little bit earlier, is so that you can already get your templates ready to start your interim work on the right new templates. All right. Why is this important for us from a probe product perspective? Well, the important thing here is that before, ISA 600 used to be scoped out of probe audit. And so this is now a new addition, which is, I think, very exciting in that you can now use your one product, your one methodology to really help you to cover all elements of an audit. What is important to note is that the product or the methodology enables the group auditor to compile a standalone file. And I'm specifically stressing the standalone file for basically the opinion about the group audit financial statements. So in other words, if you have an entity that is a holding company and then also a group, then the holding company's full financial statements, if you issue a separate audit opinion on that group's financial statements, that needs a separate audit file. The methodology simply cannot combine those two, so you'll have the one audit file for your company work on the holding company, and another audit file for your audit work on the consolidation, basically. All right, and then the same for each component as well. All right, so that is really, really, really important. So for today's purposes, in setting up the caseware file that we're going to look at, I just set up a little imaginary group, and we called it Beta Hold Company Pty Limited. Beta is relatively simple in that it has 3 subsidiaries, but subsidiaries only. So I didn't include additional business units or branches or any funny things. I also didn't include any other types of investments. So quite simple, but at least if you can just have a look and see, okay, we're going to see subsidiary A, B, and C, and Beta Holdco is then, of course, our holding company. Right, so that's the client structure for today's caseware file, if you happen to see some documentation in there. All right, then if we start moving and having a look at how we go through the product, and I've just switched off my webcam so that I can just have a look at my second screen, which is where the caseware documents and all of that is going to be. I'm sure you're going to want to rather see the product than myself. All right, so this is our workflow that we're going to work through, and you'll see that the workflow starts first with planning and risk assessment. Later on, we will move to the workflow for the further audit procedures. So as you are used to, we will start in the caseware file. We will start with 1020. All right, that is, of course, our engagement evaluation. Okay, I'm going to come back to that, the product just now. Let's just have a look at some information before we start looking at it. So probably one of the most critical, there are a number of changes in 1020, but one of the most critical changes is the fact that there are new engagement types. And that was really to help you to be able to have only the relevant and the necessary information for each of the different types of engagements. So where before we only had audit and review, we now have 4 types of engagement types, being audit, single legal entity, and then group audits, single legal entity, group audit, multiple entities, and of course review. So I've included in the slides today here, this is also in the What's New document, so please refer to that as well. And there is also guidance in the product itself. But let's just look at the, I won't say the old or the current versions or the current engagement types. Firstly, in 20, you would have chosen audit, which is now going to be called audit single legal entity, and you would have chosen review. The description of an audit of a single legal entity from the standards, definitions, and all of that is this is a single legal entity, right? We've said that a number of times, but now only one business unit. Or if the client has more than one business unit, there are no separate locations, no separate management, or separate information systems. If that is your client, you can use audit single legal entity, because then you won't be applying ISO 600 at all. However, if your client has more business units or separate entities, anything like that, you are going to have a group audit. But then within that, you could either have a group audit where the entity is a single legal entity with multiple business units, or you can have a group audit with multiple entities, and of course business units can also obviously fit in there. All right, so audit group single, as we've mentioned, single legal entity. They've got more than one business unit, and their business units have separate locations, separate management, and separate information systems. And then important here is that a consolidation process is basically used to prepare the entity's single financial statements. Then you've got a group audit. All right, that's when ISO 600 will be applicable, and you will then have a separate caseware file for your consolidation, or rather your ISO 600 related work, if I can put it that way. So the audit work that you will do on the group financial statements. On the other side of our table, on the right-hand side, when we have a group with more than one entity and the financial information is consolidated, as you would imagine, a parent with subsidiaries like our example, or any of the other options, then you will choose group audit multiple to be able to document all your work done in terms of ISO 600. All right, so that's then the first part where we are going to go and have a look at the the documents. So let me just quickly go back to 1020 and show you what we find in there. So on the screen, I've got 1020 open, and you will see already right at the start, we have the question as to what type of engagement do you have. That's your first question. I've picked multiple entities just so that we can work with that one, but of course you'll pick the relevant one. Then based on your selection here, you will get a number of questions that helps you to confirm that you have made the correct selection. So in our case, multiple entities, the question says, do the financial statements include financial information of more than one entity? And I said yes. I want to just show you also, if I say no, there are additional questions that will come up that will confirm or maybe guide me even if you need to say, should this not maybe be a group single entity? All right. If it's not from more than one legal entity, why did you choose group multiple, and then guide you through that? But let's go back and say this is group multiple entities, and we go from there. All right, so that's the first main thing to note in this template. Then if we go into the questions about the engagement continuance, we've got a few questions here that then guides us through the product in terms of the flow. So you'll see as I go through the slides, I've also given you the workflow in a slide to help you guide through that, but you are also guided in the product itself, specifically then in 1020. So in ISO 600, you are asked or you're required to obtain an understanding of the group and its environment. Normally you'd go and find that in 1120, but because 1120, well, I almost want to say doesn't give us all the space necessarily provided, or to make it in a more user-friendly way, we have then actually included a new document, which can be seen as an extension of that part of your understanding from 1120 that says, go and add the entities and all the business units from this group in the new document in 1120G. So the G part indicates to you that this is a groups only document. So yes, they will be included in your document manager for all other audits or then even in the reviews, but you will be given the information to say that this is only for groups if you have an audit single, for example. All right, and of course then the question won't be reflected here. But if we then go to 1120, this is then where we will go and document the entities and business units in our group. Now, maybe just, of course, if you wanted to, you could complete everything. You might struggle a bit at this stage. So what is basically envisaged, what you would complete up to this stage is, of course, the name of the entity, the type and the relationship and all of those things, more or less up to this first line here where we say type of engagement. What type of engagement is done on that specific entity? Right, because we haven't identified the components yet, we cannot actually continue to complete the last two columns. We'll come back to that, and we will be reminded to come back to those. So here you can see I've listed the holding company and the 3 subsidiaries, indicated what they are, where they are based. Note that subsidiary B is a new entity. So the idea here is that next year, all of the information will flow through, and I'll only have to add any new entities or new business units to the list, which I obviously do from the bottom. Once I've completed this, I will go back to 1020. Let me just quickly see where I'm going to find 1020 now. I'll go back to 1020 where I will say, yes, I have now obtained an understanding of the entities of the group. I have now documented the business units and the entities, and I move to the next question. The next question then says, did we determine whether the group has shared services, centralized activities, or common controls? And if that's the case, well, then I am guided to go, please go to 1050. 1050 is our document about gathering information about the client. So going there, now I start off having very specific questions about the group. Remember, this whole document identifies now as a group file, the whole caseware file. So first of all, I'll be asked questions about the planned extent of risk assessment procedures for the group at an overall level. Questions coming from there, do the entities or business units within the group have similar activities or business lines? If yes, then I'll answer it, and I'm immediately prompted to go to 1050G, G indicating an extension of 1050, specific for our group, to document the planned risk assessment procedures for specific classes of transactions, account balances, and disclosures within the group. Next up then, does the group use shared service centers? I've just chosen to select yes here so that we can also see the impact later on in different questions, different tables. Do they have centralized activities and processes? For today's purposes, we are going to say that the revenue is a combination of centralized activities and also activities at the individual components or individual business units. All right, so in there again, I'm prompted to go to 1050 to document the planned extent of the risk assessment procedures for the centralized activities. And also note now already, I'll show it to you later on, but 1150 also then requires documentation about the control activities and about documenting understanding of these centralized activities or common centralized activities. Then did the group design controls, so common controls in the business? Do we have them? If yes, again, we'll go to 1050G to document the extent of the risk assessment, 1150 to document our understanding. And then again, to make sure we do go to 1050 to document the planned extent of risk assessment, have you done the documentation on 1050? If you have not yet done that, the rest of the document is blank. And only once I say yes, only then will the rest of 1050 appear. All right, I'm going to show you 1050 just shortly, but while we are right here in 1050, I want to also point out a specific question that is currently reflected. Now, I'm actually going to just go to the slide to show you this document. All right, so this is a screenshot from the probe firm settings. Now, especially the caseware champs among us will know that in probe firm settings, we have a variety of options already in the methodology where you can pick to say the types of risk assessment procedures or the analytical procedures. Do I want to use 1050? Those kind of questions where you can then from the drop-down menu choose to say, will you always be doing this for all audit files? Would never be doing this for audit files, or then the middle option, which I currently have, is the one that's selected for the others, is elected per audit engagement. So the new one that you have here is that for group audits of multiple legal entities, so the file that we've set up today, you've got a group with various entities. In that case, remember this is the consolidation audit file, if you want to call it that way. In that case, you don't actually need to consider every single transaction and balance in the trial balance for the consolidation to go and document your understanding of types and volumes of transactions and the accounting policies and all those things for each of the individual transaction balances and classes of transactions in 1051. You also don't necessarily need to ask yourself the questions of, is this entity registered for VAT, and a variety of other questions in 1050. Those kind of questions really relate to these specific entities. However, you do have the option to also switch them on if you want to document them in this audit file of yours about the consolidated financial statements. So why not in the others? Because in audit multiple single entity, in group audit of a single entity, not the multiple, in that case, I'm already auditing a single entity. So there the questions will be relevant, even though this is my audit file. Of course, in just a normal audit of a single entity, I'll be going forth and documenting those matters. However, here, I have the option to either switch it on or off. The default is not required, as is reflected on the screenshot. However, in 1051, oh, sorry, not 1051, in 1052, let me just find my 1052 again. 1050, sorry. Now I've got 1052 stuck in my head. So in 1050, I just showed you where you will get the question to say, are we planning to complete for the group financial statements perspective, all the questions for gathering information, as well as the subsection transactions and balances on 1051. All right. So you only need to switch those on if you want to. Otherwise, they will be documented in each of the separate audit files for the separate entities. And of course, when I do switch that on, the questions will appear. I'm not going to switch them on for today because I want to show you the difference in the document when we don't have that switched on for this group file. All right. So that was then just to show you for 1050 where we will document the extent of the risk assessment procedures from an overall perspective, as well as then the consideration of whether you want the additional questions in 1050 and 1051 from a group audit multiple. Next up then, remember we were guided, or we were prompted to go to 1050G to document the detailed the detailed extent of risk assessment procedures per class of transactions, account balances, and disclosures. So if I then go to 1050G, I've got this lovely table. Now let me first just confirm to you, some of these columns only switched on because I had said in 1050, yes, the client has common controls, or yes, the client has group centralized activities. If I had said no, those relevant columns would not have switched on here, so I would not have had to consider them for each of the classes of transactions, account balances, and disclosures. Right, I just want to quickly have a look at the questions. I see some questions pulling through, but none of them necessarily apply to this right now. I will look at the questions later on, but I just wanted to make sure that I'm not leaving someone behind. Let me just, sorry, I think there was one that, I think there was one about aggregate information. Thank you for that question. Yes, the information that goes into this file is the consolidated trial balance. Right, so that will be going in through there. All right, so what I want to show us today then for this demonstration is to show you where, one, for property, plant and equipment, just as an example for today, this will only be tested at component level. So we won't have any detailed work in the group audit file. For property, plant and equipment, the component auditors will do the component work on the individual files. We'll only need the group audit documentation for PPE. Then for goodwill, because goodwill basically gets accounted for at group level only, we are going to only do the work at group level, and we won't be involving component auditors at all, not for risk assessment procedures or for further audit work. And then for revenue, let me just get to revenue. For revenue, we're going to do a combination. So that's where we then also include or involve the component auditors. So what you will see, just with regards to revenue as an example, we've documented whether this is accounted for at group level, or to which degree this is then affected by the fact that there are common controls or centralized activities, etc. And then decide which of these entities are included by using the little plus button. It's really quite simple. I simply plus and select the relevant ones, click submit. And then document the risk assessment procedures that will be performed at the component level. Good, that's 1050G, where I am documenting the planned extent of risk assessment procedures for the client. Good, moving on then to the recording of the components. Sorry, that I've shown you. Then to documenting the components. Now again, back to 1020, because we haven't actually completed documenting 1020. So in there, we've documented the group, we've documented the shared services, and now we are asked to please document, identify, for the purposes of planning, etc., the components. Have we identified any components? We are guided there and then added to please go and record those components on 1120G. Now remember, we've already been in 1120 when we documented the individual entities and business units. So once we've now identified the entities, we now know what they are doing. We've looked at the classes of transactions and account balances. Now we can go and document the actual components at the bottom of the screen, right? You can also, so maybe just, I've already obviously edited this. So the default says default component. It's an input cell, so you can edit it as you need. You can add extra components. And then as you then complete the last two columns, you can then, from the drop-down menu, select the relevant component that this entity relates to. So in terms of trying to help you to remember what's happening where, I've literally just called it component one and then told you hold co as well as sub A is included in this component. And then the others each have their own little separate component, just to try and keep things simple for today. All right, so that is how we are working through 1020 still, but then also documenting the relevant items, the relevant matters as we go through these items. All right. Then that was then all the documentation there. Further on, the rest of the documents, quite simple, quite relevant. What I want to point out for you is in 1051, where we've said, let me just quickly check, where we have said that for property, plant and equipment, we are going to only be doing work at component level. You will see now that the possible ROM procedures are actually not as extensive as they were in the past. The reason for that, because firstly, we said we are not going to have all that detailed information in this file. We won't be documenting the detailed considerations of types and volumes of transactions. And secondly, we are not doing any work for property, plant and equipment at group level. That work is only done at component level. So that's the only work that you need to do for property, plant and equipment in the audit file. For goodwill then, goodwill we will have only documented, or we've documented that we are only going to do the work in the group file. So there we have, I almost want to call it a normal file, the way that you would have expected them from the past. We've documented the identifying the possible ROM, and then your normal questions around the transactions and balances for goodwill, because we're only auditing it centrally, only at holdco, or rather at the group level, so there won't be anything for the component auditors. And then for revenue, just to show you that as well, revenue, we've got all the balances, we've got identified possible ROM, as well as documenting the detail, because for revenue, we are going to do it in combination, centrally as well as at group level. Okay, so all of that documentation is there as you would have expected. Good. Then that is pretty much the planning and risk assessment. For 1150, we have added, oh, sorry, let's go back to 1150. Click on the right place. We have also included then, as I mentioned earlier on, space for you to document centralized activities and the common control. So what is the system description for that? There's also space for the financial statement preparation, and then of course the relevant significant classes of transactions, account balances and disclosures as recorded for the group audit where you've recorded risks. All right. Good. Then moving on to our audit response. So you'll see now, similar to before in terms of the workflow, we now have the audit response, and we start off in our audit plan. Before I show you the audit plan though, I want to show you just quickly the risks that we've recorded in 1116, because that's where we've then recorded the risks that obviously need the audit response. And just give me a second for this document. Oh, apologies, I see I didn't open it beforehand, so let's just give it a moment. While we are waiting for that, I see that Julie Ann, you've asked the question, what type of entity should you select if you are performing an independent review on the consolidated financial statement? So ISA 600 is only applicable to audits. It's not applicable to an independent review. So if you do an independent review, you will still complete the independent review engagement for that. Okay, let's see, 1116. Good. So in looking at this in property, plant and equipment, you will see that I have not recorded any risks for property, plant and equipment from a group level. So yes, of course, if each of the entities are doing their audits, they might well identify some risks. I've chosen not to record a risk. I will select a relevant assertion later on just to show you that. Then for goodwill, I have recorded a risk because we actually had that new subsidiary number B, and we are recording a risk possibly from a complexity and subjectivity level, and so that work will only be done at group level, as we can see on the right-hand side. And then for revenue, I've recorded 2 risks. First of all, the fraud risk. Just give it a moment to change screens. So first of all, the fraud risk with the relevant fraud-related response. Note that on the right-hand side where we say, is this an entity or business unit? Which do they relate to? I've said that it will affect both the holding company and sub A. In other words, component 1, I determined that there's no fraud risk in the other 2 subsidiaries. Right. And then I've also recorded a risk for consolidation in terms of the intercompany sales that may not be appropriately treated or eliminated during the consolidation. So important to note here that if I want consolidation procedures to appear in the work program for a specific balance, in this case for revenue, class of transaction, then I must record a risk, because that's how we respond. We respond to audit risks. So I'll record a risk and I will actually select the, if we can call it the inherent risk factor, where I'm documenting the inherent risk factors that lead to the raising of this risk. I will then select the consolidation process. And because I've selected the consolidation process as the risk factor that affected this risk or led to the recording of this risk, because of that, I will then have a response in the work program for revenue relating to the consolidation process. All right, so that just to show you, I have that separate risk recorded there for the existence and occurrence assertion there. All right, so that was 1160. Then when we go to our audit plan and strategy, first of all, having a look at the risks. Again, remember, these are the risks for the consolidation or audit opinion, if I can call it that. It sounds a bit sloppy, but that's just to make very sure that we see the difference between the normal audit files of the separate entities and now just my ISA 600 file, basically. So for the consolidation audit work, for property, plant and equipment, we had not recorded any risks, but we did select the assertion of presentation and disclosure as a selected assertion. Then I've got my normal standard question as well as the question whether we determine the components at which this work will be done. And you will notice that this is then another G document, which is 1220G, an extension of the audit plan and strategy specific for the group to say, please go and complete 1220G to document where you will document your further work procedures. What I want you to also notice is that in the group audit considerations, a new little section here for the audit plan and strategy, we now have a tick marks that shows at component level. This is where the testing will be done. This is the result coming from 1220G. I will show you 1220G just now, but you can see that's the result already coming through. And because we are using component auditors, whether it is centrally with auditors or only at component level, we also, in terms of group audit procedures, have to do work on the use of component auditors. So in other words, there will be procedures in my work program that will specifically show what does the auditor have to do about considering whether the work done by the component auditor is sufficient and appropriate. The consolidation process here is not ticked because I've not raised a risk for the consolidation. The rest of the information is quite simple and self-explanatory, or at least as it used to be. That's PPE. Now let's look at goodwill. For goodwill, we said we are going to test goodwill only at the group or consolidated level. So there's my risk coming through for ABA. I have the question to say, have we documented at which component level we are going to test it? I will show you that just now, but again, the results coming through as centrally. Because I'm not using component auditors, none of the, well, the component auditors is not ticked in the group audit procedures, and I've not raised consolidation as a risk, so there's no response in the work program. So I've got required procedures there specifically requiring me to respond to the risk raised for goodwill. Good. Then next up, for revenue, that's the one where we said we're going to do a combined approach. So again, we've got the risks raised. We are asked whether we have documented where we will be doing the work. Yes, I'll show you that just now. But just again to show you, so firstly, our significant risks just pulling through again. And then when we look at the group audit considerations, I've got centrally with component auditors. So you'll expect work procedures in our audit file as well as in the component auditors. And that then has the little tick mark for the group audit procedures, and again, a response to the consolidation risk raised. So I've got both of those ones ticked. All right, so that is the audit plan and strategy 1220. I'm going to just scroll up and show you then what does 1220G look like, where we have to, apologies, then document the component work. I think the workflow here is really pointing out that we are, that planning and risk assessment is a, what is the word now? Iterative process, because we are going, I want to say back and forth, but really, if you think about what is it I'm doing, what am I documenting, where am I now, it probably will start to make sense once you get used to it. All right, property, plant and equipment. There we have selected an assertion for presentation and disclosure. We said we are not going to do work centrally, so there's the no, which means we only have to respond, or the only option to then respond is to respond through component work. So what are we asking for? Well, all the components are listed, and we then need to complete the relevant parts as guided by ISO 600 to say where will the work be done. And so I've documented here that for component 1, the work will be done at component level 1, at component level rather, component 2, the new component, at component level. But we determined by looking at the balances and whatever else, we determined that subsidiary C, component 3, does not need any work for property, plant and equipment for our group audit purposes. So yes, of course, subsidiary C will probably still have work done for property, plant and equipment for the financial statements for subsidiary C, but not for our group purposes. For goodwill we're doing only centrally. So there again, the subsidiaries, we see our risk pulling through as ADA. Did we plan to perform work centrally? Yes, we determined to do the work centrally. And so therefore, we can determine, do we need the component auditors to do anything? Otherwise, we are just confirming that we will only be doing this work centrally. Remember, in 1050G, we determined the initial determination of where we will be doing the work, as well as then determining where the risk assessment procedures will be done. Now we are confirming that the further audit procedures will be done centrally. All right, that's goodwill, only done at group level. And then if we go to revenue, for revenue, we've got those two risks pulling through. We will be doing some work centrally, but we also need to do some work with the components, and we've confirmed that there then for all 3 of the components. That's 1220G. And then from there, we go to the work programs. So I'm actually just quickly going to go back to 1220 so that we can get the nice quick links there for the work programs. Property, plant and equipment. You'll remember we said we've got use of component auditors. We've got work at component auditor level. So my expectation is that there shouldn't really be much, if any, work in the work program for property, plant and equipment. So having a look there at 30510, which is the property, plant and equipment work program in this group work program, the only work that I have is with regards to use of component auditors. So I have to go and review the work performed by the component auditors and determine whether that gives us sufficient appropriate audit evidence for our consolidation or our audit opinion on the consolidated financial statements. I do also have 1 or 2 changes to the procedures. And if I do need to revise the audit plan, there is the option also to then actually add consolidation procedures in here, but because we didn't raise a risk for consolidation, that's not in there. All right, so otherwise, mostly the same with some considerations in the conclusion. So again, you can see that I'm going to only conclude not on required procedures, but actually only on the use of component auditors. If we go back to 1220 again, let me quickly just find the, let me actually The next work program that we want to actually look at is the one for goodwill. Now remember, goodwill is the one where we said we're only going to do work at group level, so only centrally. And so I'm actually expecting, I want to call it a normal work program. So again, risks reflected, clearly trivial amounts, etc. The actual identified risk reflected, and I have required procedures there. It looks very few because remember, we only have goodwill and we've only selected AVA as the risk. So that's the procedures required for goodwill, no work required at component level. And so therefore then, when we get to the conclusion also, it's almost like a traditional one where we only have required procedures with a conclusion for assurance obtained from the required procedures performed centrally, okay, by the group auditors. Maybe at this point in time to just confirm, even if the group auditors, the same engagement partner or another partner in the firm, will be performing component auditor work, that will also be in a separate file. All right, so that's quite important. This file is really only for the group auditors work as stipulated by ISO 600. That was then goodwill. Now the revenue one, show you the revenue work program where we've got this combination, some work on the done centrally and some work done by the component auditors. Bit of a combination here. Again, the identified risks coming through, both the fraud risk and the intercompany sales right for the consolidation risk. And therefore, I've got a significant risk response from the fraud risk. I've got the required procedures, which are the, I want to call it the normal required procedures that we are going to be performing centrally for the group financial statement. So some of these procedures or similar procedures will also be performed at component level. And then we have the use of the component auditors steps to say, as auditors, as group auditor, you need to also go consider what the component auditors did, if that is sufficient, appropriate. And then because we had the risk raised for consolidation process, I need specific procedures there. Now, note here that we haven't drafted any specific procedures in response to your consolidation risk. You will need to draft them yourself and add procedures as necessary. And so what you're currently seeing as procedure 14 is then the one that basically instructs you of that fact. Then again, similarly, conclusion as you would normally expect, and then with all of the assurance obtained lines relevant to the different headings that we had before. All right, so that's the impact on the work programs for where things are done centrally with the component auditors or by component auditors only. Some other points that are new, I think I've now pretty much run through some of my slides without necessarily showing them to you, but I want to also just show you the work programs for financial statement preparation work program, and then two new ones, consolidation process work program, as well as 26.10 evaluation of the auditor's work specifically there. So let's go have a look at them. They are under the general working papers section. So financial statements preparation work program is not new. We've always had it. The difference here is that when we have a group audit, there will be the question, in this case specifically step 7, that says perform procedures related to the consolidation. You can't just check that the financials has a statement of financial position and this and that and the other. You also need to check the consolidation. So the extension then of 18.10 for the consolidation work is in this case then 25.10, the work program, specifically giving you steps around the consolidation process. So that's the change in 18.10. And then 25.10 shows you the actual consolidation work program. This one is applicable to all audits of groups. So this will be audit group single as well as audit group multiple, where you will need to then perform procedures, the required procedures around the consolidation. Remember that these general work programs don't have any risks or risk assessment related to them. So the steps will always be there and you will perform them. And at the end, have your conclusion questions and conclude at the end of the day whether that was satisfactory or not. This one being the consolidation process work program. 26.10 is then evaluation of the component auditor's work. So this one will refer to what the auditor should do in terms of considering the work performed by the component auditors, as well as you can see there in step 1, the communication with them. So all the requirements around the communication, etc., with component auditors, other than those that relate specifically to a specific class of transaction, account balance, or disclosure, as we had those little separate headings in the revenue work program and the property, plant, and equipment work program, but these ones then being specifically included in the 26.10.1 to consider the evaluation of the component auditors work program. Good. So then those ones coming in there. And then lastly, just to also just highlight to you, there are also 2 other new documents. The use of component auditors, which is an extension of the use of resources, which is where you really just document whether the component auditors are have the necessary experience or understanding, and that consideration as to whether you can rely on their work. 1223 is a document that provides you with guidance, well, not with guidance, but with a steps, space of where to document specific performance materiality for a specific component or a specific class of transaction related to a component. So those ones are also 2 brand new documents. Then just other matters, there's a compliance add-on for South Africa only, basically a Companies Act add-on. If you need or want to, in your multiple entity group audit, have the steps around Companies Act switched on, you can have them switched on. For financial reporting frameworks, you may be aware that the IFRS Foundation has issued trademark guidelines. And those, let me just show you, basically says now that we can no longer just refer to IFRS standards. We now refer to them as IFRS accounting standards as issued by the International Accounting Standards Board, or IFRS accounting standards. So, and that's really primarily driven from the sustainability standard that's also called IFRS. And so we are updating the documents, the templates, with the references IFRS accounting standards, etc., and IFRS for SME accounting standards, etc. These are still being updated, so you might find that they are not always reflected in all of the documents when you test them, but we will include all of the necessary references in the final release. But if you do see these long references, that's the reason for them. And then just to confirm that fixes and hot fixes have all been fixed in this template as well. So of course you don't need to then go and apply the hot fixes that were issued during the year. I think, yes, and then known matters, just there are some known matters that's stipulated in the what's new, so that you don't have to necessarily highlight them again when you come across them in the testing. All right. That is me. I do see a few questions. I don't know, Christian, do you want me to answer those, or should we start the video for the break in between so long? What do you think is best?
Thanks, Yone. I think we've answered all of the questions over chat. So let's give everyone a 5-minute break while we are waiting for the people joining, just for idea on our side thing. So we're going to go for a 5-minute break, and then we'll be back in a few minutes.
Fantastic, thank you.
It's good morning to everyone who just joined us. We just finished the probe session and now we are going into idea. Okay, so let's start with Caseware Idea and the easy add-ons. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the product manager for all of the assurance products, and within that is included analytics as well. So that's why we're looking at idea. Everyone is muted and cameras are turned off. Please, if you have any questions, you can ask them in the questions feature. If you do lose signal, please exit and enter the webinar again, and a recording of the session will be made available. So in terms of our agenda, we are now looking at the idea changes as well as the new products we're releasing. After that, we'll do financial statements and then Audit International. So the agenda for IDEA is we'll just look at the beta process very quickly and I'll do a recap of that. Then we will look at the easy add-ons. And what is the easy add-ons? Easy extract, easy import, easy convert, easy integrate, and easy BI. 5 brand new modules as part of the easy add-ons that we are launching to help you integrate IDEA within working papers. And I'll give you a bit more about that later. So we are now in the beta testing process, and especially for IDEA, it is going to be so important that as part of this process, we get your feedback. We only have a limited set of number of data sets that we can work with and that we can test with. So we can't cater for every single scenario out there. All the clients, the systems that they use, they can tailor it, they can make changes. There's different tables, different fields, different columns that they can add to the data. So for us to get it 100% right is almost impossible, but we try our best, and we have tested it on a few data sets, as I've already mentioned, and it has completed successfully on those. But if there's any other data sets, it's important to then test it with those clients. This easy add-ons does only work with Caseware 2024 together with IDEA. So there's an easy integrate document, and that document is on version 2024. So you won't be able to use it in 2023. So make sure that you do upgrade to 2024 for this testing. And as always, be careful not to open any engagement files in progress because you will not be able to roll back. And then after you've done the testing, make sure you uninstall and get back to the version 23, which is in the market. Our timeline, so we have our beta webinar today. We'll upload the easy add-ons install sets for you by close of business tomorrow, but I will send an email with all of the links to you on Tuesday morning. We'll also have live sessions in Joburg, Durban, and Cape Town in 2 weeks' time. And then our final feedback will be on the 28th of June. Now, if you do want to attend the in-person sessions, please make sure it's not training sessions, but we will be asking you for the feedback, looking at your data sets, working with you if you had any issues to see how we can get those resolved. Okay, to book, it is in the chat link as well, but you can go to the Success community, click on training, and the dates are there for you to book. And then I'll also send together with the templates, the easy add-on installations. Not all the components are included in there. I'll also show you where to find some of the other stuff on the community. Okay, so let's start with the easy add-on process. So about 2 years ago, we released the probe integration within Caseware IDEA, and that was specifically for Pastel. We then started with the next one that you guys requested, and that was CISPRO. And then when we started with it, we ran into a few issues, and we came up with a process in which we believe it's going to make it easier for you to actually work with the whole integration process. So previously we wanted to make it a one-click button that does everything for you, but not everything can fit into a one-click button, and it is actually easier to digest and just work with it if we do break it up. The benefit with this process as well is now for our Audit International users or just the financial statements users, even if you're not using Probe, you can now also use this integration. So we've developed it as a separate document, and that will guide you through the process, which I will show you a bit later. So quite a few benefits within this release. Many of you might ask, is it free? Is it included? How much does it cost? So for any Caseware Idea user that licensed their Caseware Idea product through Caseware Africa, it is free of charge. So the bundles are included, the add-ons, you will then, if you download it within your next renewal, you will get it there. If you are not licensed through us, but you're licensed through our international office through certain agreements, there's an additional price and you can reach out once we've released it to your account managers and they'll be able to help. Okay, so let's start with the actual process. So the first process, part of the getting the data, is extracting the information. So we've built the easy extract module, and extract is something you would then provide to your clients. They would do the extraction, and because they've done the extraction in a certain method, there's then an import button, and that import button then imports the information, all the tables that was extracted, then from the extraction into Caseware Idea, into the exact same format it is on the ERP. Then what we do to standardize the data is we convert the data that was imported, if you click on the convert button, into a standardized format that we then use to go and do the testing. Then we have integrate, and within integrate, we then bring in the testing and integrate the results into Caseware working papers. So it's no longer linked to your audit methodology. We have developed certain procedures already, general ledger procedures, trial balance, GL comparisons, those types of things. That doesn't link to any methodology. And because you're integrating it, you can then do those tests. And it also means that we don't have to design different procedures for different accounting packages because the data is converted. If you are doing, for example, an internal audit, or you're doing just in terms of your financials, you might not want to have the integration done or the conversion done. You might just want to import the data, and you're welcome to stop at any point in time. So I only want to import it, and I'm familiar with my data as I want to use it in there, or I do want to convert it into the new format. And then we have Easy BI. We haven't done any development on Easy BI, but that will take you to a website on the community, which will show you how you can integrate the results that you have now imported into IDEA, as well as converted, and the tests that you have done into visualization products. So Power BI, Tableau, even if you want to export it to Excel, there's instructions for you on how to then do that. Okay, so let's look at the add-ons in a bit more detail. So Easy Extract currently supports SysPro and Sage 300. We are looking at adding more, and if you have any more accounting packages that you really want us to add, you can reach out and let us know, but those are the two that we support for now. So what you will do is Easy Extract, there's actually a link that I will provide to you on the community. You then send that link onto your client. They will do the extraction for you, so we don't want the auditor to touch the client's databases or anything. We don't never work on a live database, and they then do the extraction for you. So they will use the administrative username and password, link to the server, link to the database where their databases are stored, whether it's a server or machine. They'll link to it, and they will then click on the export data. What Easy Extract will do is it will extract all of the different tables within that account, those two accounting packages. Once the data is extracted, it will then zip that information and it will password protect it. So clients will not be able to manipulate the data. And that zip file should then be sent to the auditor. So it's quite an easy process for your clients to actually provide you with the data. They need to download the extraction, they actually do it, they log in, they do it, and they send you the zip file. Once you have that zip file, you will then use Easy Import to point to that selected zip file on your machine. And you will then run the import. So Easy Import will then take the easy extract information, unzip it with the password provided, go through all of the information, import the tables, and then you will get a report. If there's any tables or modules or information that we don't have as part of our default import, Easy Import will give you that within the log files, and it will tell you which tables were imported and not imported. And we also run some validation to make sure that the imports actually completed successfully so that you can make sure that you have all the data you need. Then what we do is we allow you to run Easy Convert. So as I already mentioned, Easy Convert then takes the data fields and map it to a standardized library for Easy Integrate to use. What we do just need to know is within the conversion process, because all the information was extracted before, we now need to know what is the fiscal year that you are working with, and we will use and filter that information for the current financial year or fiscal year, the previous one, and then what we have of the next one, so that we can compare the data as well. But that is just us trying to make the data a little bit smaller, because as you can imagine, running all of this, getting a full extracted database from your client can be quite big. So also just make sure that with the zip files, when you do download it, you do have enough space on your machine. Okay, so now that it is converted, then we allow you to download our Easy Integrate document within Caseware, into Caseware Working Papers, and then the integration document will guide you through the process to then go and run procedures on IDEA itself and run it on the data, and it will then bring the results back into your Caseware Working Papers file. Now, again, this isn't limited to any audit methodology. Anyone that uses Caseware can go and grab that document, bring it in, and go through the process. And then with EasyBI, you can use EasyBI to create an ODBC driver, and that can then be used to export any of the tables, to create visualizations and reports that you want outside of IDEA. So at this point, we don't provide standardized reports or standardized information outside of IDEA. It's definitely something we'll explore in the future, but for now, if you wanted to, you can create your own. And because if you then use the standardized data, you can create that one and it will then work for all of the others. Okay, so let's see what this then actually looks like. So what I've already done is within IDEA, so let's start in IDEA. Well, once you install the Easy add-ons in IDEA, you will get a new ribbon. If you don't get the ribbon initially, just close IDEA and open it up again, and also make sure Easy add-ons is installed as administrator. Then you have the Easy Import, Easy Convert, Easy Integrate, and Easy BI. So you don't see Easy Extract. The reason you don't see Easy Extract is because you won't be using it within IDEA. You need to go to the community and send that link onto your client. They will actually use it and send you the zip file. But we then start the process with Easy Import. So in Easy Import, you can click, you'll get the screen, and then you'll be able to import the data. Convert will then run the conversion, and Easy Integrate will then take you to the community as well to say, how do you use Easy Integrate? Where do you find it? And all the instructions are detailed there. So there's the link on how to download the document. And for those of you who were in the probe session or in the Audit International session, there's already a placeholder that we have created for you. So that placeholder will take you also to this document, and you can then go and download the document and bring it into the engagement file. So there is my Easy Integrate document already brought into engagement file. And if I open it, it looks like this. So we go through a few questions, and we kind of have a step-by-step guide for you to go through the process. I'm just going to switch off my camera so that I can go through a bit more through my notes as well. Okay, so let's have a look at integration. So first question we asked, do we decide to integrate? Yes or no. If you don't want to integrate, we'll obviously not show you more, and then you select the accounting system. So that just helps us when we actually run the integration to know how to run it from. Then we guide you through the whole step. So we will tell you, go prepare for integration, use easy extract. We also provide you with a link. We tell you to save the zip file, have you done all of that, and you mark it as completed. We then ask you to run easy imports. You go through that process, and then, very important, as part of this process, we lock the files as we go through it. So anything that happens within IDEA gets locked in a log file, and we have two different log files. The one is an error log file, and the other one is an actual process log file. So if we quickly just look at the logs, so there's a process log, and then there's an errors log. So within the process log, it will tell you when what has started, how it actually started within the process, and we can see there we ran easy import, the import validation ran, it was initiated, there were differences. We can go and look at why there were differences. So not everything in the log files doesn't mean there's an error. Only the error log files means there's an error and you need to go and investigate. But these are, if there's errors in the validation, we can't help that. You will have to go to the results folder and see what the differences are. If there's error or differences within the TB and GL, doesn't mean there's a script error. It means there's a difference between the TB and the GL, and that's for the auditor to then go and investigate. And that is then logged in the process log. So you can see when it starts, when it ends. This takes about, for this specific client, it took about 4 minutes. So it doesn't take very long. There it takes another 2 minutes, there we go, to actually convert the data. So that's also a question we get asked quite a bit. But because it is split up into the separate bits, it doesn't take that long to execute. It is actually quite quick to work through all the data, but then also depending on how big your data is, it will take a bit longer. So that's the process log. And then if there's any errors, then which stops the process and actually makes us not being able to continue, we will stop you. We also give you an error code. So you can go to the community, there's a manual, and you can read what that error code is. And it will then tell you what you need to do. So there we can see the standard table GL source has been created, but the number of records in the standard table does not agree to the primary system table. And then there's 82 differences there. So before you continue, because we listed it as an error, our advice would be to go and investigate why, when before conversion, you have 82 different records than after the conversion. Is it because the data is in different format? Could we not access the conversion files? What actually happened there? But that's for you to investigate. So that's what we have done with the log files. So after every step and after every process, we'll ask you to go and look at the log entries, and you then have to confirm whether you've looked at it and then also sign off that you have. Then we go into Easy Convert. So we'll ask you to run Easy Convert, and you then go and link your Caseware IDEA project. So you will link it to where the actual project is saved. So there's the browse button. I can go to my documents, my IDEA documents, and there is my SAM limited file, and I can link it to there. So now Caseware working papers know where actually is the IDEA project saved, and we've now linked the two. So when you now click on the execute buttons, the execute TB compare, it will then go open that IDEA project, execute the actual trial balance comparison, and then give you the results back into working papers. So what we've also done is, if I open working papers, you can see there's an IDEA integration. You will then copy your document in there. We give you your log files, and then there is subfolders that we've created. Now, guys, just one known issue. We don't bring in the actual documents into the different folders. They will all go into the IDEA integration folder for now. But it is named according to the folder. So you can just drag and drop them into the folders. We will work on that and make sure that we bring them into the right folders into a future release. But for now, we just focus on getting the information in. So there's my TB compare. So for TB compare, I've run the procedures, I can see the results, and I can also see if there's any exceptions. Those would then be my working papers and my results within my working papers file. I can also jump back into the idea project, and I can see, okay, for general ledger, there is my TB compare results, and the information is also here. So we can see, okay, there is no exception. So that's great. So what does TB compare do? TB compare compares the trial balance you have within working papers to the trial balance you have in IDEA. So we don't want you to start with any work within your IDEA side if the extract you got from the clients and that TB is different than the actual trial balance you have within working papers. It's going to then give you differences, except if you now know, okay, I got the extract at this point in time, these 5 journals were written, that's why my TB is different. Then that's fine, you'll document it in your documentation, but then you know why there's differences. So we don't stop the process, but we do inform you about it. Okay, so there is absolutely no exception, so that's great. If we just look at what the TB compare results look like by FSA, we can now see that how many records, how many accounts are there, and were there any differences by the closing and opening balance for the prior and current year. Okay, and that then is our TB compare um, test. Then if we look at the um, TBs agree, or if you're happy the TBs agree, then we can move on to the general ledger comparison. So now we can go into a bit more detail, compare the TB and GL in IDEA, and there's a bunch of tests. So we'll compare the system general ledger with the general ledger we have already, and or with the trial balance we have, and we'll tell you if there's any differences. Then we also help you to understand the general ledger. So what that will do, it's going to break down your trial or your general ledger by FSA. So let me go and show you in IDEA what this looks like. So if we look at, for example, let's look at revenue. There we can see how many revenue transactions originated from the general ledger. That's basically a summary of all of it. How many revenue transactions originated from the submodules. So it's interesting that some come from the GL, some come from a submodule. As part of your system in, description, you'll know why that happens. If we go by the summarization, it comes from 2 sources, accounts receivable and GL. We can see the number of records there as well, and we can see the amounts. And if we go lead sheet by group number by source code, this is then basically your lead sheet, summarized by account from the general ledger. And these numbers will agree with what we have in working papers. So those totals, the functional changes, they will then agree with what we have in working papers within your lead sheets. So already we have compared the trial balance, the system general ledger with the trial balance, and now we have lead sheets with an idea that is summarized per record or per account, and you have all the information in there already. Depending then on how your client has set up their accounting package, you can start to sample. If they don't do batch processing, and if all of the information originates from the general ledger, you could start sampling. If they do use submodules, but the information is not batch processed to the GL, you can then start sampling. However, if they do batch, then that is where you will have to go to the source information and the source ledger, and you will then go and look at the information and see where that source information comes from and go and sample from the source. Okay, so that is the one thing just to take note of there. We then also go through, we summarize it by accounting period, by the created user, and then we give you a deeper understanding. So journal by source code, journal by FSA, created by user by source code, created by user by FSA. So you can very quickly see what's happening there. And then we start actually testing all of the transactions that originate from the general ledger. So we're not yet testing any transactions that originate from the sub-ledgers, only general ledger. And there we have any out-of-balance journal entries, duplicate journal entries, processed at the end of the year, and you can say what transactions do you consider as processed at the end of the year. You put in a number, we'll do that number of days before. And you choose which ones you want to execute. If you click the button, we'll go and execute them. And within working papers, you then have the results. So there's GL procedures, any out of balance journal entries, pause at the year end. You see that there's no gaps. And if I then go back into IDEA, it is because there were actually no gaps found. So GL procedures, and let's do those. And there's no out of balance, not gaps, out of balance journal entries. So there's no out of balance entries, and that's why there is actually no results back. Okay, but we guide you through this document, and if there's any missing, we didn't say execute missing GL journal entries, but if we wanted to, we can indicate those as well. And then we split them up for you, and you can then see all of the information within working papers as well as within IDEA. And you can see we've summarized the information neatly for you per FSA, and we do this by sending back and forth the grouping information between IDEA and working papers. Okay, so that was a very quick just introduction into IDEA and the integrations. We are definitely going to share in the beta's information all of the manuals on how to go through it, but the document also really takes you through that information. Okay, so we are now going to move over into the financial statement session. So I will hand over to Ninka and Mohammed to take us through everything financial statements. But if you have any questions, please post them in the chat and I will answer them as we go along.
Hi, everybody. Like Christian has said, we're just going to have a 5-minute break for everybody to quickly stretch their legs or anything that you want to do. So we will start at 10:40. And if there's people that's joining just for the financials, then it also gives them a time to join. Hi, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. If you have just joined us, welcome. And for those of you that have done the first 2 sessions, thank you for staying for the financial statements. So for you that don't know me, my name is Ninka. I'm the product manager for the financial reporting side. And then with me today is Mo, which will also take us through some of the technical elements that has been updated and is part of the speed up. For the session, just remember your microphones are muted and your cameras are turned off. Please use the chat or question functionality during the session if you have any questions. We will answer them as we go along, and we will also have a session at the end that we will cover any of the specific questions you have. If your signal is lost, please exit and enter the webinar again and use the app rather than the browser. And as always, the recording will be made available after the session if you want to refer back to it. I'm going to start with a few housekeeping items. So if you were in the first session, it might be a bit of a duplication, but we do want to cover it just for people that have just joined us now. Excuse me. So firstly, we are, for the agenda, we are part with the financial statement session now, and then after this session will be the Audit International session that you can stay on for if you use that product. What we're going to cover today is introduction, then we're going to cover the financial statements, the IFRS and SME, and then I'm going to quickly talk about the roadmap and for the rest of the year. And then Mo will take us through the speed guide, the firm template guide, data retention, and caseware working papers after. So just a reminder on the beta process, it is a very integral part of our development as it gives you the opportunity to provide feedback on the content, but also in your environment, which we obviously can't test extensively on our side further because it might be quite unique. The beta templates are not the final market versions, and therefore testing must always be done on a non-live engagement files, and all the templates are working papers 2024. So remember, you will have to install working papers 24 when you do the testing. Remember also when you update a file then, and if you open it, it will automatically convert to 2024 and you can't revert it back to 2023. And that's why we say a test file is really the ideal situation to test this in. Also remember, after testing, you should install working papers 2024, especially if you're a firm, because if your files converge, you can't go back. So please then reinstall the market versions until we release. Then the beta timeline is we have the beta webinar today. Then we have the beta testing that will be from the 14th to the 27th of June. And then we have 3 in-person events, and then the final feedback will be on the 28th of June. So as part of the beta process, we have 3 check-in sessions. The one is in Joburg, one in Durban, and one in Cape Town. You would have seen this also on the mailer that went out. These sessions are really for us to get feedback for when you after you've installed and done your testing, and we want to sit with you and go through that feedback. So please note, this is not a training session. We won't be covering anything additional to what we're covering in this webinar today. It's more for us to sit with clients that are doing extensive beta testing and giving us that feedback in person. So if you have not registered for this event, you're more than welcome to. But as it is in person, it is limited seats, so we will be in contact with you directly for any additional information on this. Then for the beta process, if you have done it before, you'll know that we have a cloud site, and what we'll do is we'll upload the template, the release notes, and everything on there. Because it is a long weekend, we've decided to do the webinar today, but we will make this all available to you tomorrow. You will receive an email to say this is it has now been uploaded and that you can start looking at that. I have also put this link in the chat if you want to look at that in the meantime, but there's nothing on there yet. Right, with that, I'm going to start with the changes. I'm going to also just switch my camera off for anybody that has bandwidth issues and that I can demo all the products. Right, so firstly, our IFRS changes. One of the first changes that has come in is an amendment to IS1 to the classification of liabilities with loans covenant as current or non-current. If an entity has the right to defer settlement of a liability for at least 12 months after the reporting period, but obviously subject to conditions, there is some disclosure that you have to do. So the effective date for this amendment is for years beginning 1 Jan 2024. So we'll see most of this only coming in with the 31st December 2024 release. But as you will see on our roadmap, we have done all of our compliance changes for this year in this release, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. So that is why this is included, as well as the other compliance changes. So what did this affect? So it would be your loans from group companies, your loans from shareholders, your borrowings, and also significant judgment. So I'm going to jump in between the slides and the software just to show you these changes and to give you a bit more of an idea of the, what you can expect when you do test this for beta. So if I jump to my IFRS file, you will see I'm going to look at the loans from group companies. So you'll see the same disclosure: loans from group companies, loans from shareholders, and borrowings. We've included this non-current liabilities with covenants. And if you open that section, you'll see that we've put in here a table and then some disclosure that you can put in up until there. So this section here is the new section that you can complete. We have seen that because from here onwards, this section was part of, is now part of this non-current section if I open it. So again, if I close it, you can see that this section here is at the bottom. So we are going to correct this with the final release. So if you do notice that, you're welcome to note it. But we are going to correct this, that this is actually also part of a separate subsection, that it doesn't cause confusion when you open this section here at the top. If I then go to significant judgment, you'll also see we have this section here that refers back to the notes, which you can go and complete if this is relevant to you. Right, so then the next change is supplier finance arrangements, which was the amendment to IAS 7 and IFRS 1. This applies to circumstances where supplier finance arrangement exists, and there's again, the effective date is from 1 January 2024, and that's why it's included in this release. So there's a few notes that is affected by this. Firstly, a brand new note for supplier finance arrangements, which I'll show to you. Then you have borrowings, trade payable and trade payables, sorry, with new mapping to have your separate lines in there. Again, your significant judgment, and then also the cash flow worksheet and how that is affected by this change. So again, let me just jump back into the financials. And if I start with the trade and other payable note, you'll see I just have some figures in there that you can see how it pulls through. So here's your new line for supplier finance arrangement, and you've got a figure there pulling through. And you also have a subsection here that refers to the supplier finance arrangement note. Also note that items like your financial instruments, etc., will be updated for your classification between financial instruments and non-financial. If I then go to note H, which is supplier finance arrangement, you'll see you have space to do your different arrangements. We've got 3 in here and some example text, but just to give you an idea of how it should look. And then we have some tables here at the bottom. So here's your carrying amounts, and like you see, there's my figures that pull through there. And then you've got some additional disclosure that you can complete here. Then if I jump to the borrowings, you'll see exactly the same as I have on the trade payables. I've got a separate line here. And then again, if I scroll down, there's your new section of the non-current liabilities with covenants. And then you have your supplier finance arrangement there, jumping to note 8. If I then jump to significant judgments, again, you can see here that there's some example disclosure of what you can potentially put in there. These are very specific about your presentation, of what your arrangement is, and therefore this is really just an example and will have to be tailored for what your contract is saying. If I then go back to my supplier finance arrangement, you'll see here at the bottom I've got some non-cash changes which will be which can potentially affect your cash flow. So I'm just going to complete this figure here just to show you how it affects the cash flow worksheet. And let me jump there quickly. So as you can see, you have your opening balance, which was zero for both of these cases, and this closing balance that, if you remember, would have been in your balance sheet. And now I have this 5,000 and the 10,000, which was the non-cash elements, which will automatically pull through here. So just an update on the cash flow worksheet as well. Right. Let me jump back to my presentation. So that was our supplier finance arrangement and the changes that have come up there. Then for IFRS and SME, we have a few changes. So the first one is the basis of preparation. And like Joanna has mentioned, these two changes were made in the information store. I'm going to jump to the IFRS one quickly and just show you where it is. So if I go up here, you'll see that this is now changed, and this is the default also that show. We have, however, kept the old one here as well. If for any reason you need it, we have found that some of the African countries might still use it. If you do an old set, you might want to do it. But this is really the trademark change that has come through from the International Accounting Standards Board. There is not, from our understanding, speaking to them as well as of SAICA, there's not a specific date that you have to apply this. What even the International Accounting Standards Board have said is, as they continue and update their material, they will use the new term, but they won't go back and then change it on all documents and all collateral. So that's the information that we got from them, but this is the new default that will be available in these templates. Then the next one is the going concern and events after reporting period. So the change that we've done there is the COVID-19. As you guys, I'm sure all of us are very glad that that's something that's long ago in the past. So we have changed the disclosure just to take out the example text in the guidance that was there for COVID-19 to remind you of that, and also with the different year ends, as we believe that's not relevant anymore. We also took the opportunity to change the notes to make sure that they exactly agree to what is in the front in the director's report. So those changes you'll see on both sides. I'm not going to show that to you because you'll only see the new ones and you won't see the change. Then for the director's report, we've made the following improvement. We had quite a few requests from clients about the carry forward header not working in the director's report. This is something that was never implemented from the start, so it wasn't that it wasn't working. It was something that at that point it was felt like those notes will always be small enough that you will keep them on one page and you wouldn't want to split them onto 2 or 3 pages. So for that reason, it was never implemented similar to it is in the notes and the accounting policies. But it has become evident that, especially in the last year or so, it's become very relevant to a lot of clients that they want to have the carry forward header. So we have included that now, and this is now, like I said, for the IFRS and SME financials. So let me quickly show you that. So if I jump to my director's report, and I can maybe quickly just show you, yes, your events after reporting period, like you can see no reference to COVID, and the same as the going concern. And then if I do a print preview, then you will see that we've got the carry forward header now included. So let's just wait for that to come in. I do want to ask you to test this quite extensively if you can, just because it's different notes, different scenarios, and it is something new that we've built in. So if you can have a look at it in your files and see if it works as expected and give us that feedback, it would be great. Just waiting for the print preview to prepare. So guys, I am on a beta file, so as you can see, there is some issues with my print preview this morning. And if I'm now going to click anywhere else, it will go away. Okay, great. So there's the events after reporting period, and then your going concern, and then like you see, there's your going concern continued. So like I said, you can test this extensively on your side, especially the notes that you know normally go over to the next page. then and give us that feedback, it would be great. Again, a change is done on IFRS and on SME side, so you can test it in either. Then the next one is an interesting one, and we've got two changes in tax, which I'm going to go through now. And the first one is the assessed loss in the taxation note. So how this worked before the second change that we introduced last year is your assessed loss that's typed into your info store would have pulled through to the note. Now, when we changed the assessed loss calculation with the limitation, the CTM tax component, we have not updated that link, so it would have still gone from the information store. So because this is an external document, we have to think about how we're going to refresh it that the right amount is putting through. But before we get to that, I'm going to do a quick poll. And what I want to do here is I want to ask you, let me start the poll. So the first question that I have is, do you use the tax computation when you draft financial statements? And the first question is always, and I print it with my financial statements. The second one is always just for the calculation, but I don't necessarily print it. The third one is sometimes, so less than 40%. I know we're all accountants here, so we like the numbers, depending on the client. So we sometimes print it, sometimes not. And then the last one is I never use the tax computation. So if you can answer that poll for me, I'm going to leave it like 30 seconds because we really want to understand the user journey that you have when you go and you prepare financials, especially in regards to the tax computation. If anybody is interested, it's about 38% you say always, 32% say never, so quite a split between those two, and then the rest is the middle two. So let's give it like 30 more seconds, and then I'm going to close the poll. Right, I think everybody has answered, so thank you for that. So let me close that poll. Right, so that really gives us very valuable information about what we, how we're going to implement it. So with that, let me just take you through the user journey, how it currently works, and then I'm going to come back to this question again, or another question. So let me open the financials. And I just want to double check. I just want to stop the poll quickly. Let me. Okay, great. So we've stopped that. Okay, so now in the financials, let's go through this user journey. So if I go to my information store here, this is where you will type in your tax loss brought forward. So this is not new, it's always worked like that. You'll type it in here. If I then go to my financial statements and I go to my taxation note, then you'll see that these figures pull through here. But they will only pull through here, how it currently works, not in the template that you have installed, if I open my corporate tax computation. So if I open this, you'll see that this figure pulls through. If I ever didn't have this closed, so let's close that. I'm going to save that one. And you'll remember now that the figure that we have is the 1.2 and then the 1250. So if I go back to my information store and I change this figure to be 50,000, for example, and I jump back into my financials, you'll see that this figure did not update. The only time that it will update is if you open your tax computation because it's an external document. So like I said, it works the same as our cash flow worksheet in regards to you, it's an external document, so we have to put a refresh in. So for the cash flow worksheet, and I'm sure everybody's very familiar with it, you have the refresh button here, and we also have the refresh button here at the top. And that is how we refresh the cash flow worksheet. So similar to this, we have two options now, and I'm also going to launch a poll. So think about this, how this will work the best for you. We have an option of, we can either put where you type in your tax loss brought forward, a refresh button here somewhere that will update it in your financials, or we have the option to put it in the note. So if you do use the tax computation, it will update as soon as you open it. But this is more in the case where you don't use it. So I know 38% of you said you'll always use it and print the financial statements as well. But even if you can also answer a poll and just say to me, what would make more sense to you? So like I said, the first option was in the information store. And the second one is probably in the taxation note, we'll have some guidance here, which will give you the refresh button. And those are your two options. So I'm going to start the next poll. And if you can, I'm going to launch it. And if you can tell me, right, so if you can tell me, if you need to put in a refresh button in the financial statement for the assessed loss, would you rather, like I say, have it in the info store when you type in the number, or in the note? And I also want to ask you, as you answer it, think maybe about your firm and your people preparing the financials. Will they see it in the tax note? Will they know about it? Will they go back to the info store and change it, or would they just overwrite it? I know you guys use it differently. So if you can answer that question for me. So I'm going to give it another 30 seconds. Also, while it does, I'm just going to check if there's any questions. We've got no questions as far, and Christian has answered all the other questions that come through for idea. So if there is any others, you're welcome to answer that as well. Okay, so I have here, most of you would prefer it in the note. Right, so let me close that. Thank you very much for that. That really gives us very good feedback immediately to go and see how we can develop and implement that. If I then go back to my slides, then the last one was the CTM assessed loss calculation. And let me just quickly show it for if you may be not familiar with it. So if I go to my tax computation, we've brought in the tax computation at the bottom last year, which calculates the assessed loss. But what we have noticed is for one of the scenarios, it didn't work as expected. And I know there's one of two that I actually saw on the call, welcome, that asked me this question. So if you can please go and check that this now works for you. The situation where it didn't work is if your profit was between $1 million and 1.2 million, and your tax loss was the same, then it didn't calculate correctly here. So if I just go up a bit, this figure here didn't calculate correctly. It put in $1 million instead of taking the 80% of your taxable income. So it was for a very, very specific scenario, but we had to update these formulas for that. So if you can please check that that is now working correctly for you, and also check other files to make sure that there is not other scenarios that it now doesn't work. We've tested this in a lot of scenarios, but we do know that there's always some different ones in the market. Right. So that from a compliance and an update improvements perspective, we've also made quite a few improvements on this super insert. For those of you that use this or have not used it and maybe consider using it, I'm going to take you through the 3 new tables that we have introduced. So the first general change that we've made is that all the menus now link to the super insert. So before we had the super insert, you had the option to right click insert row, or you would go to your menu bar at the top and you would do that. And we really wanted to make sure that the journey and the different options available is consistent. But we do know that sometimes you're so used to using it in a certain way that we didn't want to take the other menus out at this point. So you'll see as soon as you click on any of those, and I'll show it now to you, it will bring up the same screen that you get when you use the super insert. So that is just for consistency and to make sure that everybody has the same journey. Then we've introduced 3 new super insert options. This is really from the market requests that we've received on where you would like to use it. So the first one is your details of properties. I'll show that to you. The second one is your input row link to map, negatively linked to map with terms. And this is really very specific to your loans. And then you have a text table, but we've also included. But let me show it to you rather, because then you will have more visual of how it looks. So the first one that we've done is the details of properties. So if I jump to PPE, you'll see that I have this details of property here. And now just to illustrate the menus that we've changed, if you then right click here, you'll have row, insert row. So all of these now open your super insert function. So it looks the same like that. But if I go and stand there, and as you all know, best practice is to stand on the subheading, I click on my super insert button and I go to table. I'm going to insert this at the bottom. Now I have this details of property IFRS only. And what it does really is the standard templates get shipped with 5 details of properties. You might want to add a lot more. I know we have some investment companies that have quite a bit more. Then you're now able to do that. You will notice that one of the things on the beta install is, let me revert that. If you do use this function, same as the lounge, you can only use it in the section where that table is. So you can use details of properties where details of property is. So that will be your PPE note and your investment property note. So I've already included one. So I'm just going to go out and scroll to the bottom. And like you can see here, I've got these 2 new ones that I've added. That is your standard property 5. So that is the first one that we have included. The second one that we have included, and I'm just going to jump to my loan note. If any of your loan notes, say for example, you have here your loans to shareholders, you've now created additional mapping and now you want to make it pull through here. So what we've done is put in another super insert here. So to see this one, if you stand on the table, you'll see that your table rows are normally grayed out. If you want to activate it, you have to go into builder mode. And the reason for that is because you anyways will have to, if you use the mapping one, put it in here and to make sure that this is not used in the wrong way. So if I now click on table rows here, you'll see that there's 3 new options. I've got an input row with terms, loans only. Then we've got a link to map with terms and a negative link to map with terms. So my expectation would be that these are the 2 that you do use because you're going to create new mapping and then you're going to use them. But for consistency, we did put in the input row as well. But if it is an input row, then obviously it's not in your trial balance necessarily. So we don't expect a lot of users there, but we wanted to have the consistency of all the rows. So if I now click on below and link to map with terms, then I can include that. And just a reminder, you can also insert multiple rows. You can do 1 row or 10 rows if you want to do multiple ones together. So now you have here the mapping number, which you then can drop down click and you can go and select your mapping number. So especially our firm template, our clients that uses firm templates, like I say, add more, then you can do it in this way. Then the last improvement that we've made on the super insert, if I just go to my last note here, and I've already included the table here, but I'm just going to show you where to find it. If you also go to table, and if I go to this alphanumeric column here, 1 to 5. So what we found is we have clients that asked us that they just want a text table. So we see this sometimes like for, especially in director's report, that you don't want numeric values in any of these, you just want text. So this is what this is. It's 5 columns. You can switch them on and off, but by default, they're all alphanumeric. The important thing here is if you don't use all of them and you maybe need to space them out more, and we just put in some guidance here, then you can right click and you can go to column and you can say set column width, and you can spread them out. If it's maybe a large text portion and then a smaller text portion, but you use your real estate as effective as possibly. Right, so those are the changes to the super insert. Like I said, please give us feedback on that, and we do believe that these improvements that has come from the market will make your life a little bit easier. Then some other changes. The Zimbabwe currency will change to Zimbabwe gold, so we've updated that to ZiG. Then the cash generated from operations note, this is only in the SME template. If you wanted to right-click properties on the finance cost and investment properties note, the description didn't change or didn't retain. So we have fixed that. Then in the details, and I'll go through that now. So if you replace your normal income statement with the detailed income statement, so your detailed income statement moved from the back to the middle of your financials after your balance sheet, then it still had the footer to say supplementary information. So we corrected that on this install, that works correctly, that it doesn't have that footer if you move the details install. And then, as mentioned by Christian, we had some changes on the assurance report quite extensively. If you have missed those changes, you can refer to the probe video. The assurance report is also, it's probes content, but it is in the financials. So we always cover it in one of the sessions. But then what we've also done for the same scenario, so if you have, and I'm just going to jump back to my financials. So I've priced this with a detailed income statement. If I go to my assurance report, not register report, then I have this other information. So in this set, the detailed income statement is still at the back. If I moved it to the front, then this page numbers didn't change and it still referred to the detailed income statement, although it was in the middle. So it didn't make sense because it's not supplementary information, it was in the middle. So we've changed this that if you move it to that, this paragraph changes and doesn't refer to the supplementary information if you don't have any other section included there. So again, if you use detailed income statements quite extensively in your full set, then please double check that this is working for you on your side. Right, so that is from my side, and I'm going to hand over to Mo in a moment. I just want to quickly refer to our roadmap for the rest of the year, just because I know the people on this call are normally involved in the beta and also in the firm templates and all of that. So like we have our beta period now, and we had the question about the when we release. Currently the release is planned for end of July. We will communicate this in an email as soon as that's finalized, just depending on the beta feedback. And that is where we currently are. We have planned this release with probe and with the changes that we have for the group audits, but you have one release, and if you do want to update, you can. We do, however, are going to have another release in October, but this is only going to be an XBRL release. So we're going to update the taxonomy and the validation and all of that. The XBRL is done in such a way that you just have to install the template, and then if you open the financials, the XBRL will automatically update. So you don't need to run a financial statement update or update an engagement file to get the effect of that. So it's really up to you if you want to take this release and do the update now, or if you want to do it later towards the end of the year. But it is just important to note that this is the two releases that we are planning for the rest of the year. I've got two questions which I'm going to look at while Mo is presenting, and I will answer them because I see I'm running a bit over time. So thank you everybody for your time, and thank you for joining us today. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Mo.
Good morning, everybody. I'm excited to be here today. I think it's an exciting time. We've been on a long journey getting to this point. With I think we've been working on this release for quite a while, and there's some great speed improvements in particular that we want to take you through today. I think first and foremost. After that, we're going to be looking at some of the improvements to the firm template guide. Then we're going to take you through some of the data retention enhancements that we made. Obviously, data retention is very crucial for us. It allows you to it retains as much data as possible so that you have to do the least work after updating your file or doing a file new from existing. And then we're going to just look at some of the caseware working paper enhancements that have been made in the 2024 release. So with that, I want to start with speed. And in terms of the roadmap, I think our speed journey has started already last year through the October release, where we went into details on the optimizer and made it work slightly differently. I think our initial feeling when we launched it was that everybody would use it, but lots of people weren't automatically optimizing things out of their file. So we rolled that change out last year, where we suggest to you when you launch the screen what should not be in the file, either because it's not on or it has no figures. So we're going to just recap a bit on the financials optimizer. So that benefit you should already be receiving if you're on the 2023 template. With this release, we looked at very specific areas in the AFS and probe. One of the areas that we looked at was the actual CV database in files and in our templates that we released, and we found it quite bloated, and we realized that by unbloating it and removing the records that are not supposed to be there, there was a definite speed enhancement across the AFS and probe. So that benefit you can expect to receive now. I do want to make mention though that this is only going to be available to people that do a file new or a file new from existing. We tried to implement the reduction of the CV database records on update, but the update of the financial statements or probe would then take over an hour. And that's not a position that we want you all to be in. So I think that's the only thing to note on this current release. When testing especially through the beta, when you're testing for these speed enhancements in the AFS and probe, it has to be tested during the file new from existing. And also in this release, what we've started with is a speed guide. We're going to take you through the speed guide now. It's the very beginnings of our speed document. Obviously, we're on a journey and we want to fix all areas in the template that are slow. And we're at a point now where we're going to start collating a list of steps that can be performed on a file if they are applicable to you, which should theoretically make your file faster. We're looking for files which are slow, specifically that you can share with us, so that we can continuously use the speed guide on those files, with a view that from now till October, we'll go through all your slow files with the speed guide, continuously improve on the speed guide, with a view that in October, we want to be in a position where we can give you a speed guide and you run through a certain number of steps. And at the end of that process, you'd be in a position where you have a faster file. So that's the roadmap and how we see us tackling our speed issues within the template. So just to recap, the financials optimizer is something that you should already have. It's in the financial statements, the optimizer button. And what we found there was that there's a direct relationship with the amount of content that you have in the file versus how fast the file is. So the less content in your file, the faster the file is. And on average, only about 50% of the content needs to be in a file at any given point in time for the bulk of the files in the market. So because of that, we gave you the financials optimizer, and when you use it on a file that has about 40 or 50% content, you get a substantial speed improvement. So I do want to implore everybody out there today, if you're not already using the financials optimizer, please start using it. Then I think with regards to the specific improvements that we made with regards to speed, one of the things was the CV database where we reduced the size, which had a knock-on effect of increasing the speed in the financial statements. But further to that, we also looked at the on-opening script of the financial statements in particular. So the first major speed improvement that you should look to receive is when you open the financial statements for the first time, we run a few extra steps, particularly reapply formatting. And we used to get a time of about 2 minutes and 50 seconds, and now we're on about 1 minute 40 seconds. I must stress that the benchmarks that I'm putting on screen will vary from file to file. We took these benchmarks from the largest set of financials that we have, which is basically on our MSCOA template and had in excess of 15,000 accounts. So obviously you all can expect to get if you're in an SME file or a smaller IFRS file, you could expect to get much lower times than this. But this is, we're taking the approach of looking at the worst case scenarios. So what you'll also notice is that when you open up this, after you create a file, when you open up the financials second, third, fourth time, we call that the subsequent opening of the financial statements. We brought that time down from 1 minute 40 seconds to 40 seconds. So we took off a whole minute on the opening speed of the financial statement. So my hat goes out to the teams. I think they really put a lot of effort in to try and get that done. Other noticeable areas of where we've found a speed improvement on the financial statements in particular was on the turnout notes with balances. We took it down from 1 minute 22 seconds to about 47 seconds. Obviously, you should expect to get faster times if you're using a file with less content in it. And the rounding. So when you switched rounding from ones to thousands or millions, it went from 2 minutes to 1 minute 46 seconds. So there are other speed gains. I think these were the most notable ones after making the on-opening speed improvement changes and the CV database record changes. But these are the ones I just wanted to highlight, I think, today. From an AFS perspective, and in the same vein, I think from a pro perspective, we really focused on the refreshing of the risks table. There was a couple of solutions that came up, but ultimately the one that we chose resulted in the time improving by 91%. So refreshing of the risks used to take 1 minute, say about a minute, and now it's taking 6 seconds. So there's a substantial speed improvement here. Raising of a risk went from 15 seconds to 9 seconds, and linking a risk to a control went from 2.5 to 1.5 seconds. So we are on this journey with you. We hear you. We understand that there is a speed problem in the templates. We don't intend fixing it. We can't fix it in one release. Obviously, the templates have been around and have been continually being added to in terms of features. But we consistently over this release, the next release, and possibly even next year in October, looking to introduce some substantial improvements with regards to the speed of our templates. To that end, what you'll notice is that we've now started listing a specific set of steps that you can follow in the financial statements. So how we intend is for us to always have a speed guide available for you to download on the Success community. This speed guide will be continuously improved. So that's why I'm not going to ship it as part of the template, because I see it in being us releasing a new version probably every month or every second month from now till October, and maybe further than that. And I want you all to always get the latest speed guide whenever you're trying to diagnose problems or fix problems in slow files. So that's how I intend releasing this over the next few months. In its current form, what you'll do is you'll drag and drop it into your document manager, and you'll open it up, and it'll start presenting with steps to follow. For example, the first step that it'll ask you to do is an autofill. If you click the autofill button, you just have to click autofill now, and just like that, the autofill will be completed. The second thing that we noticed, especially with MSCOA files, it's because of the way the users in that market have to work, where they have to continuously import a trial balance. They call it a data string every month. And those data strings have in excess of 8,000 accounts at a time. And often what happens is these accounts get remapped. So the old account, on when you bring it in on month 2, that old account, the balance that was in the old account shifts to the new account, and that old account just sits there with a zero balance, and you ultimately end up with thousands of extra accounts in your file. So for our M-Score clients in particular, I think we saw a substantial speed improvement by them just removing all unused accounts in the file. So we give you a button which you can click, and it brings up the dialog to remove all unused accounts. And just like that, you'd be able to quickly solve that problem. It's not going to only be limited to M-Score. It really depends on how you use any of our templates. But I think the problem showed up there. That's why I'm explaining it like that. The next very big area of improvement, which is also not applicable or might not be applicable to everybody, it's mostly applicable to people that only use our software for financial reporting. So they don't use it for audits, so in particular Probe. What we've noticed is that for those people in the market that only prepare financial statements and don't need Probe, they can get a substantial speed benefit, particularly when it comes to the year-end close. For example, what I mean is, if you have to do a year-end close with our templates, or SME template, and you have the Probe documents in the file, it'll take you about 5 minutes to do the year-end close. If you had to click this button and purge your Probe documents, because you're a client that only does financial statements, so Probe is not relevant to you, you have the ability now to purge the Probe documents. And for example, when you do a year-end close, that year-end close comes down from taking 5 minutes, comes down to taking 1 minute. So that's a substantial speed improvement that you can expect to get when using the speed guide, and obviously if it is applicable to you. So we intend on increasing this list. The next key area that we're targeting, and notice that you would get a speed benefit on, is often what happens is you have a file and you continuously roll it forward, roll it forward, roll it forward. So you end up in a scenario where you've got 5 prior years in the file, but you never actually need the 5th or 4th prior year. That information, we're going to include a button in here which will basically remove the balances from the prior years that are not needed in the file. So we'll always leave the prior years that you need for balancing and for disclosure purposes, but we'll give you the option of taking out the prior years that you don't need within the file. We've seen that, especially when there's a large number of accounts in the file, that does also have a massive speed benefit throughout multiple features in the financial statements. So that's the next step in how we intend enhancing the speed guide, and we're looking to you to send us your files so that we can start using it, or downloading the speed guide and running it on your files and seeing if it makes an improvement. And if it doesn't, you're more than welcome to share those files with us so that we can add to this guide continuously, so that hopefully by October we're in a position where most of the problems that we got to speed can be or are addressed. The second important thing, over and above adding steps in the speed guide that will ultimately make you faster, is we have included in here further details on the optimizer. So I think a couple of things that we just wanted to bring to the fore was how much of your notes are actually placeholders and how many are non-placeholders. So as you can see, there's only 26% of this file of the notes are in this file. 73% is basically placeholders. And we are going to start using this information when you send us your files to start analyzing where there's problems. And one of the things that we're looking to do is start determining in particular which notes might need a redesign. Basically because there's too many cells with too many calculations, or maybe there's too many cells writing to an external database but we'll be able to use this information to start understanding how you all are using the files and focus in on certain areas with using data to be more informed and fix the right areas. So that's essentially what we're doing with the speed guide. The other important feature that we're going to be adding to this as well is the ability to automatically benchmark your file. I think we analyzing doing that feature at the moment. Essentially what it'll do is it'll open up certain key documents and measure the time that it took to open, to save, to recalculate within those documents, just so that we can quickly start identifying the slow areas that we need to look at. So that's how we intend addressing the speed problem. So you've got the financials optimizer, which you should already have. You've got the reduction, the CV database, which is shipping now in July, and the optimization of certain scripts, particularly with regards to the opening speed on the financial statements. And we're releasing the initial version of the speed guide now, which will continuously iterate with your help if you'll share the slow files with us. To get to a point by October where we've got a few more steps in here, which should theoretically make your file faster after running through the speed guide. So we're really excited to go on the speed guide journey with you. I think it's going to be of huge benefit to you guys if you can get the speed faster. I think that was a key theme that came out of visiting clients last year, that we really need to enhance the speed, which will obviously make you all more efficient, which is the place that we want you all to be in. So that was the first thing, I think, first area of value. Okay. Thanks, Nika. Okay, then we're going to, the second thing that we did is we looked at the firm template guide. So we've got a lot of feedback from you guys in terms of the firm template guide. I think it was very well received, and it's really making the process of creating a firm template much easier. Where we are is we made certain, I'm just going to take you through some of the enhancements that we made for this release. I think we'll continuously make improvements on the firm template guide, considering how well received it is and what a big difference it makes in your lives. At a high level, some of the key features within the firm template guide is, first and foremost, I think everybody was looked at, we had an option here to turn off all content, and everybody really wanted or felt that was a useful option. It was a real time saver. And what was asked of us was if we could do a turn on all content. So essentially what happens now is you'd be in a file that has notes and accounting policies which are off. Obviously you would have brought in all your content at this point in time, and you'd basically just want to switch everything on because it just makes everything easier, especially when you're firm champion going through every single note. What we've done is we've just given you a button to click. It will work just like the turn off button, where it'll automatically go to the financial statements, turn everything on, and it just makes your life a bit easier. The second thing, I think, which was a recurring theme from sitting with clients, is that they wanted a way to easily navigate from the firm template guide to other parts of the financial statements or the caseware file. So this go-to button was added. It just makes life easier if you want to jump quickly from the financial statements to specific areas, or from the firm template guide to specific areas in the firm in the financial statements. And I think the third, and where most of the notable improvements have happened here, is with our automated testing. So we're on a mission to make sure that when you all release your firm template, you all have the highest level of assurance that this is a high quality template that we should have the least amount of issues with when you roll out to your firm. And a key part of that is the automated tests. So we've in the past given you duplicate sections, duplicate goods, overlapping sections, and two new notable automated tests is the first one being the find incorrect KLI sections. So I don't know if you all might be familiar with when sometimes you maybe try to use the super insert. And you say insert a new table or row or whatever it is, and then it'll give you the error that recalculation error. And often it's very difficult to fix and you don't know how to fix it. So what this test actually does, it tests if you have the problem in your firm template before you ship, and it automatically tries to fix it. So it's a double-edged sword. I think what happened with some of the previous tests that we did run is that we reported on the test, but users felt that it's very difficult to fix some of the issues. So we took that into consideration when designing some of our new automated tests. And in this test, for example, where we would like to fix things automatically. So here we can automatically fix the problem. And if you should end up with a tick that says that when you roll out, you should be confident that you're not going to get any recalc errors, especially when using super insert. Another important test that we introduced for the firm template guide was the ability to find blank sections. So it works like all our existing tests. You click a button, it'll give you the cross of the tick to tell you that something has passed or failed. In this example, I'm just going to open up. It's telling us that these sections seem to be blank. And we want to be in a position where there aren't any blank sections in the file, or we want to alert you. It's possible that somebody could have made a mistake when creating a file. Especially happens when our clients go into design mode. So we wanted to just alert you to any possible errors that could exist within your file. Financial statements. So when you get a result from that text file, you just have to search for it in the file, the firm template that you're working in. And for example, here it's showing us that this section on the accounting officer report doesn't have any content, and it's a bit of an early alert that you might have made a mistake when customizing the financials, especially if you were in design mode. I think we introduced this test because we saw it happen on a few files, and that got released, and then they had to re-release. So we said we'd rather bring that into our automated testing process so that you can pick up these errors in advance. We have made a few other changes to the firm template guide, more in the order of the way that the steps are laid out to you. But that predominantly is the major changes to the firm template guide. So I'm quite excited. I think we're going to continuously look to add more automated tests. I think we want to put you guys in a position where you all are confident before you all release the template to the firm or to the rest of the firm, that when it goes out there, it doesn't have to be a subsequent release of the automated test. For us is the area that we're going to expand and to put yourselves in that position. Okay. Then continuing from an efficiency perspective, we obviously want to retain as much data as possible when you're running an update or when you're doing a file new from existing. So data retention is a key feature for us, which we continuously enhance. In this release, we've made a couple of improvements. Some of the things that we are retaining now is particularly on the cash flow statement. For example, we put in a concerted effort to make sure that the figures on the cash flow statement and the cash flows and the related notes on the cash flow statement, whether you're doing an update or you're doing a value from existing, retain more. So that would be a great area if we could get some feedback on. Another improvement that we've made from a data retention perspective is previously we weren't retaining the rounding limit which was set on the screen. So if you ran an update or if you did a file new from existing, we weren't retaining this rounding limit. So that's another area of improvement that we've made with regards to data retention. And the third and major part of what we've done with this data retention improvement is many of you we saw use this right-click properties and change the wording here. And what would happen is that it would, when you did a file new from existing or you ran an update, it never used to retain these values. So going forward, so what I mean, any file that is created on this 2024 version, and when we go to when you update to the 2025 version, we will start retaining all these cells where you have changed the description through the right-click properties. So that's a substantial improvement. It'll just mean that you spend less time doing the renaming or changing descriptions, because that would automatically be retained. So those are the three key areas from a data retention perspective that we've improved, that we'd like y'all's feedback on. If you want other areas improved, please feel free to suggest it to us. We're more than willing to look at all areas that you think would be of benefit to you. And I think then the last bit of improvements that we want to take you through is on the Caseware working papers side. So just a bit cognizant of time, so I'm going to go through at a high level on the various changes that we've made through the release notes. So first and foremost, on the protection setup, you used to have the protection, the ability for a person to be assigned to a right to set protection. We split that out to be a right for set protection on and a separate one for set protection off. So you can give more people the right to turn protection on, and then obviously fewer people the right to turn protection off. So this, within Caseware working papers, was the first change that you can expect to receive. The second change that you can see in the new version of Caseware working papers is that you're going to have a tick box on the history dialog, which will enable you to see document insertion events. If you untick it, obviously those won't be there. And if you click on the details button, it'll give you further details like what document was copied and who copied it and that type of thing. So it's a very useful feature, we feel. On the lockdown side of things, we've introduced a new option which actually when you do a lockdown and this option is ticked, it will automatically make all documents in the lockdown file read only. So that was a request from client that we felt would be beneficial to everybody, so we included it within the software. Another in our content drive to make sure that you have the best user experience possible, what we've done is we noticed that often certain clients used to have a very long folder path, and whenever you opened up the file, it gave you a very a message which really wasn't related to the problem you're experiencing. So now we improved the mirror messaging to essentially tell you that when you've got a file that's too long, it's going to tell you fail to uncompress the file because the file path exceeds 260 characters. So especially for new Caseware users, I think it immediately lets them identify the problem and fix it. It's quite a simple fix in terms of just making the path to the file shorter. Another improvement that was made is that whenever you were on the trial balance in working papers, and it was a consolidated trial balance, so you had the consolidated option ticked, you weren't able to annotate. So that shortcoming has been addressed in this release of Caseware working papers, where you are now, when you have a consolidated trial balance or consolidated view on the trial balance, you can annotate. More behind the scenes changes was on the data store admin tool. We're letting you use the latest versions for the data store. And I think the most important change, which I'd like to highlight from a fixes perspective, was what we noticed was when you imported a trial balance with map numbers. Often what happened is you'd have a trial balance created on, say, a 2022 file or a 2021 file, and you'd want to take that trial balance with the mapping into your 2024 file. So you just copy and paste the trial balance from your old file, and you'll paste it into Excel, and then you'll do an Excel import into your 2024 file. What used to happen is that you do the import into your 2024 file, and for every account, for every map number, it would go and create that map that didn't exist in the 2024 file. It would actually go and create the map number. And that map number on import, after being created, it wasn't being pulled through to anywhere in the financial statements. It wasn't going through to any of the probe lead sheets. And it basically made it very difficult for you guys to balance your financials or to make sure you're getting the right results within probe. So what we've done is when you import a trial balance with map numbers, we first check if the map number is in the file that you're importing into. If it is, then we bring that account in with the map number, so it's automatically assigned. But for any account that is assigned, that has a map number that's not part of the template by default, we will import that map number, but we won't assign it. And we'll leave it unmapped so that you can then take it to the right place. I think this is going to make a substantial improvement when it comes to figures not pulling through to the financials correctly at times. So I'm quite excited for this release. I think we've done a lot of work in many areas, and particularly with regards to the speed. We're in the middle of our journey, and we really want to get the best bang for your buck. So I'm really looking forward to this release, getting feedback from you guys, and working towards a faster product for the October release. So with that, thank you, and I will monitor the questions in the chat.
Thank you so much for that, Mo. So before we start with Audit International, we're just going to take another break. We are a little bit early, but I'm going to start the session because we are recording it. I will start it then a little bit earlier. So I'm going to just play the video while we wait for all of the Audit International guys to join, and then we will start with the Audit International piece. So everyone can have a bit of a refresher, get a coffee, grab something to eat if you quickly want, and then we'll start at it's 12. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone had time to quickly take a breather, get something to eat or drink. And now we are going to go through Audit International. So last but not least, our Audit International product. So just a reminder, if you're not an Audit International subscriber, it won't be relevant to you, but it is our international audit methodology. So I will be presenting as the product manager also for the Audit International product, all the latest changes. For those of you, there was a few that joined during the break. As a reminder, microphones are muted and cameras are turned off. And if you do want to chat to us or if you have a question, please raise it in the questions box. If you do lose signal, you can exit and re-enter the webinar. And please rather use the app than the browser. We just found that experience to be better. And lastly, a recording of the webinar will be made available when I send it out to you guys on Tuesday. Okay, so in terms of the agenda, we're running a little bit early, but as it is recorded, I'm going to continue, not keep everyone waiting. So we are now, for the last hour, going to look at the Audit International changes. So we'll just quickly recap the beta process, look at the assurance reports again, ISO 600, what's new, features, fixtures, the known matters, and then looking in detail in content. So the beta process is a little bit different for Audit International. So let's start with it. So Audit International, we get from Caseware International, we then create an Africa version of that. So we only recently received the international version. So our team is still busy working through all of the changes. So not all of the localization has yet been applied, and we also haven't yet developed all of the different network installers. But we have also thought it important for you guys to see and to go through the beta content so that you can see what the ISO 600 changes are. And as always, so that you can, if you want to, either run it or your template or just work through our template, see how it will affect the changes within your templates. If you are not a network installer and you are in Africa or you're not part of a network firm, then you don't have to worry. Use the one that we say share, and those changes generally won't be applicable to you. Also important, we make Audit International available on Caseware Working Papers 2023. As we know, you are still busy with the engagements and you can't have two different versions of Audit International with working papers installed. So for now, if you are part of the beta group and you want to test Working Papers 2024 with Working Papers 2024 and the new financials, then you will have to upgrade. You might get script errors as you are installing the template, but don't worry. Unfortunately for now, it's not making a difference to the engagement file. Your engagement file will still be working, so you will still be able to test it. But if you don't want to go through that process, stay on 2023, and then you won't receive any errors for the network installers. Okay. And then if you do upgrade to 2024, just make sure you go back to 2023 after the beta process. So just a quick recap of the timeline again. We're having the webinar today. We'll upload the installs at close of business tomorrow, and then I will send out an email to you on Tuesday with all the links. Then we have in-person sessions in Joburg, Durban, and Cape Town the week thereafter, and we expect the final feedback on the 28th of June. Within the beta feedback email link that we will share, there is a beta feedback form. You can add your feedback there. And then for a reminder for everyone attending in person, it is an in-person event, so capacity is limited. We do try to limit it to 2 people per firm, and just remember it's not a training session, but more a beta feedback session where we go through the feedback that you have, the improvements you would want to see, or the issues you ran into while you were beta testing the template or engagement file. Okay, so if you want to register for the in-person events, it is on our community. You can go to training, and the 3 events is listed there, and you can register for the relevant one. Then for the collateral, when we do send out the email, the templates and install sets will all be saved on our support site, and you will then get access to that. as well as the feedback sheet. There's a link in there. So if you want to provide feedback, there's a link to the feedback sheet. Please add the feedback in there, and then the development teams will work through that feedback. Okay, so if you attended the financial section, Nico already mentioned the assurance reports and some changes there around the detailed income statement, as well as some of the wording of the financial reporting standards. So again, the assurance reports part of the assurance products. And we also just want to mention that we have updated the consolidated, so when you do consolidated, the financial statements, you now will see the consolidated financial statements in those assurance reports, and we will refer to the group. So it's in relation to the new SOPs that was released, those changes was made to the assurance reports as well. And then there's also a new tick in the information store. So if it is a public interest entity, you can indicate as such. And then for the South African firms, the enhanced auditors reporting as defined by the URBA code has been included there, where they changed the definition of public interest entities and what then also has to be reported on in the assurance reports. So we have updated the product for that then as well. So all of your assurance reports, if you want the enhanced auditor reporting switched on, go and switch on public interest entity if it's relevant. It will then show, and that's done in the information store. Okay, then in terms of the document manager and some changes there, underneath the financial statements folder, you'll now see two new folders. The first one is idea integration, and the second one is client inquiries received. So the idea integration we dealt with in terms of the idea easy add-ons, part of the session today. If you maybe missed that, you can go and watch that recording. But the integration from Audit International and Cato working papers is now possible into IDEA with the easy add-ons that we are releasing, and you can get the results back into your working papers file. Then for the client inquiries, it's a brand new cloud app that we are releasing, and this app will allow you to send inquiries to your clients, requesting them to submit the trial balance or other information, source documentation, sample selections, those types of things. You send it out, they then complete it for you, and the moment they submit it, it comes back into the engagement file. So those that's an app that we will be releasing. And if you do want to know more about the app or want to test it, because it is a cloud-specific app, you can reach out to me. I'll also show a bit more about it in those in-person events. Okay, so now dealing with ISO 600 and getting into the actual content. I'm just going to switch off the camera so that we can limit the bandwidth here. So ISO 600 relating to the audits of group financial statements, including the work of component auditors, is the brand new standard that was released, and it do include the new and revised requirements as well as application material. It also aligns with the requirements in ISO 220 and 315. And then it also strengthens the auditor's responsibility for professional skepticism. So the two-way communication is really important, and the top-down approach also comes into play. So how you plan and how the group auditor take responsibility for their audits is quite important. And you'll see that when we look at the new documents in a bit more detail. And then also it is effective for audits of group financial statements for the periods beginning on or after 15 December 2023. So the first ones will be the 2024 year ends, or if you have a not a full year engagement, then it could also be applicable if the year end is after, or the period end is after 15 December. The reason why we're having the release a bit sooner is because of ISO 600, because we normally release in October, but this year we decided that we will release in July, so that if you need to use the ISO 600 content for interim audits, you could. If you want to early adopt, you could do that as well. Or if you just want to work through the content and get your teams prepared for the changes coming up, maybe for your December engagements, then you can do that as well. So we just wanted to make the content available for you, and when we ask you in the sessions, most of you indicated that July will be a good time for you. Okay, so when we think about the changes within the template itself, all previous documents relating to any group or component auditors have been removed. So previously in Audit International, we had the group documents, which were the old ones. Then 2 years ago, we added the concise documents, which grouped kind of the processes together, which was a gap between the old standards and the new ones. And now we've basically gone and deleted all of that. So all of that is in the past. They are no longer relevant. We are not maintaining them. And there is a bit of differences. We haven't replaced all of those documents. We've only replaced some of them, but you will see that when we go into detail there. It's also important to note that the template was developed in such a way that it allows you to create a standalone audit file for the group. And we say one opinion, one file. So if you have to do an audit opinion for the group, you would need a file to substantiate that opinion. If you need one for the parent company, you would need one to a file for the parent company. If you need one for the subsidiary, you would need one a separate engagement file for that specific entity. Okay, so you can't, it's not the whole group, all the components, all the subsidiaries done in one engagement file. For each engagement that you do, for each separate audit report that you do, you need a separate engagement file. So just an important concept to make sure, because otherwise there is some confusion if you try to document everything in one file. What is documented for the group? What is documented for the subsidiaries? What's documented for the components? And it's not clear what then has to be documented. So if that's our structure, there's 4 different subsidiaries, there's a holding company, and then we are doing the group. We would then have 5 different engagement files. One for subsidiary A, one for B, one for C, one for the beta company, the parent company, and then one for the consolidated group. And then also, we'll see how we differentiate between where the work is being done. Is the work being done in the group by the group auditor, or is the group being done in the subsidiary by the actual component auditors? Okay, so let's look at some of the features that we've included before we jump directly into all of the content. So for the engagement files, we have now included the engagement file version within the metadata. That just improves us, for those of you that run the batch update tool or work with Caseware Cloud, it helps us to quickly report on the engagement file version. And when you're then running the updates, it makes the batch update tool run significantly faster. And also with Caseware Cloud, it can very quickly identify which files are on which version. So that just helps when we are reporting on information, what versions we are reporting on. Then previously, we had when an engagement file was being updated and it was a SmartSync file on cloud, while you were doing the update, that whole file went into a read-only state. But what we have done now is we have improved that update process so that the whole engagement doesn't go into a read-only state, and we only make it in a read-only state when we are busy updating the non-SmartSync safe documents, the files where multiple people can't work on it. While we're updating those documents, the engagement file will be in a read-only mode. After we have done that, it will then be in the normal mode where everyone can work on it. So just an improvement there. And then we also added a warning message when you try to delete an assertion associated with a significant risk in the FSA. So in the FSA, you can allocate the assertions, what is relevant and what is not. But if you had a significant risk indicated, you could delete it, but now you won't be able to. Then in terms of profiles, so profiles 11 to 13, so those last ones at the end, were added with our ISA 315 release 2 years ago. And those were the old one form plus score, and tailor per engagement profiles. We have now removed them. They are now completely outdated. They won't be maintained anymore, and they have been removed. So you can't use those old profiles anymore. So if you have a firm template, make sure that you also remove them. And if you have customized them, make sure that you disable them or move them back to the current OneForm Plus score and tailor per engagement profiles. So those are the pre-ISO 315 profiles. We are no longer maintaining them, only the new one. And any new client files that are created with profiles 11 to 13, or that was previously created on 11 to 13, they will not update during the update process. So we're not going to even attempt to update them. You need to either create a new file or move the profile to the new profiles. But the recommendation would be to rather create a new one so that you can also get all of the documents in. It's just much more automated process. Otherwise, you will have to bring them. Okay, then in terms of the layout or the dashboard as we know it, together with the document manager, there is one other change. So we used to have a control design section and a control design folder. We've updated both in the document manager as well as the dashboard control design to be understanding system of internal control. So that just makes a bit more sense, and it will also then apply to the layout after the update is applied. So this one is quite important. We never touch your document manager. So the actual definition of the folder will not change. The naming of the folder will not change within the document manager. But if you do install the new version of Audit International and your other templates also use the layout, or your other engagement files also use the layout, then those layouts will have the new wording. But the engagement, the document manager in the engagement file will not have the new wording. The document manager in the engagement file will only update when you update the actual document. So that's just what I've put on the slides here. So the layout will update the moment you install and you open an engagement file, because it's only one layout, doesn't matter which version you're on. The document manager will only update when you actually update the engagement file through the update process. So don't be scared if you're now seeing the new wording after you've installed in all of the engagement files. Just make sure everyone is aware of that. And it will also be on the person's machine that actually installed it. If the other people still have the old one installed, it will be the old name for them. Okay. Then moving on to fixes. So some of the, there's a few more in the release notes, but I'm just going to touch on some of the more important ones. So when you deleted all of the procedures from a group, it didn't used to delete the group itself. So your group stayed, and then you also had to go and delete the group. So we've now just fixed that. So when you delete all of the procedures in a group, it will also delete the actual procedures. And then when you import controls, so only controls, it didn't use to import any linked procedures. So if in another file, or if in your library, you created a controls library and you've linked them to the procedures, if your staff then goes and they import the controls, it didn't bring in the procedures. So then it was a linked control before, now it's unlinked, and then it was kind of lying in the air somewhere. We've now fixed that so that importing a control also bring in the related procedure that it is linked to. That didn't happen when you did a risk or a reportable item. So when you imported a risk or reportable item, it already brought in the procedures. So we just fixed the controls to make sure that works the same. And then previously, when you tried to import more than 30 risks into a work program or a checklist, it gave an unknown error. We have fixed that, so you can now import more than 30 risks into your work programs. And then it will be linked as it was linked before, either from the library or the engagement file you're importing from. So 30 risks is quite a lot for the different work programs. So those are quite big audit engagement files, but you can now import more than 30 at a time. Where previously you had to kind of limited. So let's say import 10 at a time or 29, and then do it a few times, but you can now go more than 30 at the same point. Then for those of you that do engagement updates and not new files, previously the update all button did not apply some of the options from within the AO general options. So it didn't update all the documents by default, and then you ended up having to still open some of the documents and update them manually. That has now been fixed. And then lastly, after we got some feedback that after a template or engagement update for case view has been run, those documents took a longer time to open. And we have looked at the update technology, we've seen what the issue was, so we have now fixed it. So whether you create a new file or you update a file, doesn't matter, the document on opening will take and should take the same time, and we have then fixed that specific issue. Okay, then just two known matters. So we are aware of those, and we will look at fixing them for the final release. So firstly, in work programs and checklist, when you look at the icons for the procedure conditions, so those gray eyes, or the tags, which is the blue eyes, you may see that after you've run a patch, it doesn't show you the conditions anymore. So you can't see what the actual conditions are. So in that case, next to the home button, there where my mouse is now, there's a tooltip button. It's a red, it almost looks like a red robot button, a red light with a black box around it. You can click on that. That will then fix that, and all of the pop-ups and the notifications for those gray and blue icons will then come back, and you'll be able to see the changes or the visibility conditions. And then the last, as I mentioned, we did release the template quite soon after we released it from Case International. So not all of the localizations has yet been done. So we are still busy with localizing a few of the documents, and two of those very important ones with quite some changes is 415, the engagement letter, terms of engagement, as well as 750.10 operating expenses. So terms of engagement, the engagement letter, this is quite an important one because that whole document was updated. So all of the localization have to be redone. And if you are now a network author, the same will apply to you. If you've made any customizations to our engagement letter, remember when you did that, you had one of two options. You could either create a copy of our engagement letter, edit that one, and then it will never receive updates. Or you could have edited the actual one in the file, and then when we update it, you will lose the customizations that you have added. So depending on which option you did, you'll now have to look at that and see what changes you need to apply to that specific document. And this all relates to the change in terms and groups, the new group paragraphs, how we're referring to the entities when it's a group and not a group. And then for operating expenses, we've noted that not all of the operating procedures or operating expenses procedures is in there. It only contains or mostly contains the human resources procedures. So we are just adding that back from a localizations perspective. Okay. Then quickly touching on integration. So I mentioned before, depending on your strategy around how you are testing the financial statements, you'll either upgrade to 2023 or 2024. If you don't upgrade to 2024, then obviously you will not be allowed to integrate with the 2024 financials for beta. If you, however, do, you would be allowed to upgrade. So integration can still work with the 2023 financials for the beta release if you don't upgrade. So just make sure that when you do test Audit International, you also have the related financial statements templates installed. Otherwise, you will get errors on integration. Right, so now we actually get into all of the new documents and the new content that is there for group. So you remember all of the other ones are deleted. This is now the documents that we have dealing with group. So we start off with Form 420, Group Audit Component Materiality. Then we have 421, Component Balances, and that's a new automatic document that we will add in to help you with your components balances if you use the consolidation feature within Caseware. Then for 2022 is your worksheet where you're selecting a component audit, whether the component has to be audited or not. 535 just deals with the financial reporting requirements for the group as well in the consolidation process. 590.600 deals with the engagement scoping and what is considered components and not, and what will be audited where. And then we have two letter documents, 5200 and 5201, which is your letter to the component auditor and instructions for the component auditor. So those are Word documents that you can use to actually send on to the auditors. Then we have 622, which is evaluating the work of a component auditor. That's a checklist, and you would have to complete that for every component auditor that you have. And 635 is the financial reporting audit procedures. So linking to 535, but there we have the actual audit procedures, and 310 checklist where the partner acknowledgement. So there, it's not just group content. It is a bit more than group content, but it's the partner taking ownership of the whole engagement. Okay, so let's open these documents and then go through them in a bit more detail. So I'm starting off with the optimizer checklist. So as with everything in Audit International, the optimizer checklist drives the optimization within the engagement file. Previously, we had questions around, do we want to use the condensed version of group or not? Is it a group? Is it not a group? Now we have these questions. So question 20 and question 21. So question 20 asks, under the ISO 600 revised, a group audit is the audit of financial statements that include the financial information of more than one entity or business unit through a consolidation process. For purposes of ISO, a consolidation process includes, and then it lists that. It also tells you which documents will be included and procedures, where will those procedures be included. And then if you say, yes, component auditors will be involved in the audit, it also includes the component auditors forms. If you say no, they will be excluded. So important, we need to update these questions. Any firm authors out there, you need to, if you have any specific group questions, the old group questions were deleted. The new group questions are now included, and you need to link your procedures to these. So then let's start with 420-600. And the very first thing I did is I went and I clicked on options and display document guidance. So that is the easiest way for us to understand what do we actually want to achieve with this document. So there we have the objectives, and we also have some notes. So what is document 420.600, especially if we're new to this, we don't know what this new document is all about. You don't have to go read through all the release notes, but it does give you the information here. So it says the objective is to determine when classes of transactions, account balances, or disclosures in the group financial statements are disaggregated across component, to do the component performance materiality and the thresholds above misstatements for the component financial information ought to be communicated to the group auditor, so the clearly trivial thresholds. It also gives you notes to say, does it supplement other information? What do you need to consider? Does it impact other documents? And it provides the links to you. So there we have the guidance in terms of for the component performance materiality and thresholds. They should be communicated to the component auditors, and they can communicate that using letter 5201. We also recognize you might have your documentation in place already, so you could add yours in there. Okay, so how the document works is you start off, there's a drop down. If you've integrated or consolidated rather with different entities, then they will be listed here. If you just import the consolidated trial balance, you haven't integrated or consolidated with the different entities, you can also type. So I've typed in ABC Inc. Then you document how you want to disaggregate, your performance materiality for each of the components, and the reason for those thresholds. If there's any specific circumstances for a specific component, so if you want to lower it for some of the components for a certain financial statement area, you can do that as well. And then remember, you will have to go and communicate those in the letter. There you have your conclusion, and it is the same as 420. So this is the 420-600 for group. There you would have your planning and finalization. So one document, you'll be using it for both. Then we go into 590-600. So 590-600 is your group audit work program. So yes, we said group, and now we need to scope our engagement. So the different components. So first, let's look at the objective to determine the components at which audit work will be performed. And there it says, go review the different documents. This is just a working paper. You don't have to use the document. We recommend that you do, but you can also have your own documents that you use. So again, a drop down, you choose which ones on which components you want to select. Did you identify any risks? Do you want to disaggregate the Scottibees? Sufficient appropriate evidence that they obtain a yes or no, any past misstatements, control deficiencies. So this just help you to determine where the work first of all, will audit work be required? And if audit work is required for that component, will a component auditor be used? Yes or no? And if you then say yes, you would then communicate it. If you say no, well, you would still, you'll then choose to do it centrally or not. If you do it centrally, then you won't communicate it. But if you don't do it centrally, and it is a component that will be audited by another team, you would then also, within the same firm, you would then also communicate it. Okay. And then you'll see there's these info or guidance buttons. You can click on those. It does just help us to understand what these headings mean. So does the component contain Scottibees? If it does, is it material? Is it immaterial? Or is it dissimilar in size and nature? So than the group. So you would want to look at it separately. And then for centralized activities, it's just whether the group is doing centrally or not, and you want to have a look at it from a central perspective or not. Okay. Then after we have decided, for example, yes, a component auditor will be used, then we go into 422, which is the worksheet for selecting a component auditor. So let me scroll up again. And the document guidance do say to assist in the selection of a component auditor, plan the work to be performed, agree the terms of the engagement, and communications with component auditors. So this is your checklist. This isn't the communication to the component auditor. This is only your checklist helping you to say what you need to communicate and to check that you have communicated it. There you can see the two-way communication, the level of involvement. So what will they do? What will you do? Are the component auditors competent and capable? You go through that evaluations, the communications to the component auditor. We give you guidance, and we have included those two forms for you to guide you through the process. Okay, you can see there's quite a lot to communicate. And then you conclude, are there any concerns regarding the component auditor, yes or no? If you say no, we'll automate the conclusion. If you say yes, you would then have to document what the concern is. Okay, so there is no concerns, and then they and you or the engagement partner will then sign off this document. Then we move into document 622. So now we've evaluated our components. We said a component auditor will be involved. We've communicated to them what they need to do, and then they send their back to us. And now what we need to do is we need to complete the evaluating the work of a component auditor submitted document. It's a core document, as you can see. And there we say it's to assist in the evaluation of the adequacy of the work of a component auditor. So the work that they did, is it what we communicated, that they deliver on everything, and did we receive the communications back? So they can't just submit whatever they've done. We had to give them instructions. They do what we said they had to do. We evaluate if they have done it correctly. So there we go through the process. It's again a checklist. You have to then conclude, discuss any significant matters. So first of all, did they do the work that we discussed? And then what did they find from the audit? The risk assessment procedures, any high risk procedures, did they do those? Any additional reviews required, any additional procedures we want to ask them to perform based on the evidence that they've submitted back to us? And we then go ahead and conclude again if there's any misstatements or any of those things. But we conclude and we say we are happy with the work of the component auditor. Okay. So that deals with, I want to say, the component auditor part of it. So let's look at then understanding the financial reporting process. So new document as well, 535. And the objective of the document is to obtain an understanding of the entity's financial reporting process through performing risk assessment procedures for the purposes of identifying risk of mature misstatement. And it's supplementing Form 530, which is understanding the components of the entity. So let's just go through the financial reporting process again. And you'll see that there's quite a few questions around the disclosure process, any centralized activities, the different reporting frameworks for the group, if that's different, how are we dealing with that, and then the group reporting process as well as the consolidation process. The terms we use, it becomes quite interesting. There you can see AFRF. People might ask, what does that even mean? Again, in the options, switch on the document guidance. There we can see the abbreviations. AFRF, Applicable Financial Reporting Framework, FS Financial Statements, TCWG, those charged with governance. So if ever you find yourself not understanding, in every document we use the abbreviation, it is actually documented in the document guidance. Now, by default, you won't see the guidance. You have to actually go options, display document guidance, and that's when you will see it. So if you're unsure about anything, what's the objective, what is any abbreviations, or how does this document fit into the rest of the process, make sure to go read and look at the guidance. Okay, so now that we've done the understanding of the financial reporting process, we look at then actually the actual financial reporting, and we go through and we evaluate that specific process. Okay, so there's some procedures. This is a checklist, and then when we get to the consolidation process, there's our consolidation schedules, any adjustments, intra-group transfers, your different investment schedules, non-controlling interest, if there's different reporting periods, how you'll deal with those, foreign subsidiaries. You can see there's quite a big list that you can work through, and then you have your audit plan completion. There could also be some new risks that come up. You can then go and record them, respond to them accordingly. Okay. And then the last document for all of these new documents that we've now spoken about is 310.1, the checklist partner acknowledgement. So there's already a 310 document, which is also a checklist, but here we have a bit more in terms of the checklist. So this objective is to ensure the engagement partner's responsibilities have been completed. And you can see this is what I mentioned at the beginning. It's not just ISO 600. It is all of the other ISOs as well. So 200, 220, 240 as well. Again, my abbreviations in the guidance. There's not much more to say. The engagement partner must be involved in the audit, and they need to say how they were involved and what they actually did. So here is where we give them the guidance on what they should have done throughout the engagement. If they haven't, they will have to go back and do that. So here is all of the checklist questions. How have they been involved? The audit report, appropriateness, any written communications, overall quality, commitment. So these are not procedures we dreamt up. Those are in those specific standards, the one that says the engagement partner shall. The engagement partner shall do the following, and we just prompt you to make sure that during the audit we will prompt you to do that, but there's also a checklist for you to make sure that you have done it, and you haven't done it, you can do it before signing off. Okay, so that is all of the new documents. If we then look at the a bit more detail, so the documents that's not new but do have changes for content as well, there is about 70 major procedure changes, 79 minor procedure changes, 32 new procedures, and 6 deleted procedures. So we didn't delete too much because the previous audit content wasn't included in all the different documents, throughout the audits in all of the different documents. It was more just in the group audit section. And now we've deleted all of those documents, but we've added for the other documents the group audit procedures within there to prompt you. So just quickly, the difference between a major and a minor change. So the major changes on update, those will come in automatically. We've deemed them important enough for you to get those changes, and you won't have a choice. For the minor ones, those 79 changes there, they are the ones where we are fixing a reference here and there, or we are adding a full stop, fixing a spelling mistakes. It's minor changes. We are not going to update your procedures automatically for those. When you do the all update, you do have a choice whether you want to update minor as well. You don't have to if you don't want to. The biggest ones in the minor changes are the term that we refer to either as group or entity. So those would be the biggest changes, and that's why there's so many minor changes then as well. And then for those new ones, that's all of the new requirements dealing with ISO 600 that we've added across all of the other documents. Now remember, in the release notes, when we do release it and I send it out on Tuesday, you will be able to see the detailed changes, what has been changed, which procedures, how we've changed it. So that is all documented for you within those release notes. Okay, that brings us to the end for Audit International as well. I'm not seeing any questions at this point for any of the Audit International. Let me just quickly see. There is one around the assurance reports. So we'll definitely send all of the recordings, whether you are just here for one of the sessions or all of the sessions. You'll have a choice which ones you want to have a look at. So that will be sent out on Tuesday then as well. Okay. That is, if there's then no Audit International questions, I look forward to seeing you. For the guys that I'm seeing in person, looking forward to see you then in person in 2 weeks. Otherwise, happy testing. Let us know if there's anything we can help you. We are super excited about all the changes within the new templates, especially all of the ISO 600 changes that we are releasing and helping you to do those group audits. But if you do have any questions, reach out to me, Nicole Mo, and we can then help and respond. So if there's no other questions, I'm going to then end the webinar, and we will either see you in person or looking forward to getting your feedback.